Hi, welcome to Critical, the history of pro wrestling video games. This is episode one. I'm your host, Mongo, and I'm joined, as I was the first two times we tried this, by my co-host, Liger Busa. How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm just glad we have recording software that works this time.
Yeah, we finally did it.
We had a hell of a show the last time we recorded, and then I got a DM like, "Hey, just clarifying, you were recording, right?" And I was like, no, I thought you
Yeah,
were."
but you know what? Shit happens. It's okay. Just some miscommunication, but I mean, we can go back to that topic at a later time. I thought it was really good, actually. Yeah.
And when we do, I solved the mystery of several of those New Japan on Virtual Boy character select screen pictures we couldn't figure out.
Yes. Yeah.
Shout outs to whoever it was that translated the magazine articles about that game. I still want to play it because you know what it kind of looks like to me?
What's that?
It looks like a. Have you ever seen like Tokan Retsuden on the Wonder Swan?
Oh, a long time ago. Yeah.
I haven't looked at that game in a long time, but it looked like just a red tinted version of that. It's clear that like the wrestlers' names at the top of the screen, the camera angle, like the way the sprites look, it kind of feels like they were trying to do like an 8-bit Tokan Retsuden, and also it's fucking being published by Tomy, so that was the company that put all of those games out.
That's
Obviously
right.
developed by Ukes,
Yeah.
who are I guess still developing AEW Fight Forever. We had a few weeks of news, and then I guess something happened in AEW, and goddamn, the floodgates sure closed.
Yeah. That's kind of frustrating because, as you said, it was like a floodgate of news, and now it's gone silent again. And I don't want to say that's troublesome or anything because they just showed it off at the expos they were at the time, Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show. But I wanted it to keep rolling, and now we're back in the dark days, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, everything's pointing to the Elite being back soon, and
Yeah.
I've come like I would say full circle, but I've gone like 180 on it with like you just let Kenny come back. I don't really need the Bucks, but if those guys are coming back, the operating theory on the AEW Games Discord server, and I've seen this elsewhere, was that Kenny was going to be at Tokyo Game Show to present like a trailer that would potentially have a release date, and THQ Nordic typically, as someone on the server pointed out, likes to do like a 2-month lead time between trailer with the pre-order and then the release date.
Right.
So, I mean, potentially, you can make the argument they were maybe looking to drop the game in November. I think if those guys are back in like, next month or December, the PlayStation Network database had a placeholder date of February. So, like, I could see like Full Gear or the big Dynamite in December when Winter is Coming. I could see a trailer maybe for either of those.
Yeah, I could see
I'm
that.
hoping.
Yeah, me too. And there were still some people that thought that maybe it was going to make it out this year, but obviously at this point, that's definitely not something that's going to happen.
Oh yeah, no chance in hell.
No, no.
No,
So
I was hopeful, but
yeah, me as well. Yeah, we've talked about it before when we couldn't record, but I've liked a lot of what I've seen from that game. And as I've said previously, I'm not someone that's a big fan of Wrestle Kingdom or the Day of Reckoning games. For various reasons, like I still feel like those are very much Yuke's games, but this one definitely has more of an Aki influence to it than those did. So there's a few things that I had problems with that we've talked about, like some of the animations, but overall I think it looks fine,
yeah,
and I'm looking forward to it. So
I think slowing down the one winged angel just a tad
yeah,
would be nice, and also like the camera angles where you don't actually see the dude hit the mat on that move. You can tell the animation looks like devastating, but like you don't get you're kind of like robbed of the actual impact of the move. I was super happy when we saw the Adam Cole Kenny Omega gameplay footage that I've in no way watched like hundreds of times, just
yeah,
trying to
same.
find everything that I could. Um, because like we'd seen the little teases with like Darby and Jungle Boy and like that 11 seconds of fucking Chris Statlander and Nyla Rose they gave us back in May, which honestly that made me angry more than it did anything else. Because like you showed more of their entrance videos than you did the gameplay. Why would you do this?
Yeah, and
But like it's easy in like those short clips to make the game look how you want it to look. That the player versus player match we saw with Adam Cole and Kenny Omega, it looked really good. It looked like a 2022, or I guess in this case potentially 2023 version of like Revenge.
hmm no, and that's
I
exactly it.
saw,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I saw a lot of people saying it looks like a perfect follow up to Day of Reckoning, and it doesn't look like DOR to me. Like it has the
No,
5 finishers thing that DOR had going on, but it looks like Gaeta's like handprints are all over. Not even fingerprints, like whole ass handprints are just all over the footage we've seen, and I love it.
and a lot of that too, like it's the graphical style, right? For someone to say it looks like a follow up with DOR, but they looked a lot more realistic, right? They had that more realistic look, and same with Wrestle Kingdom but this is more of a cartoony approach, which
Yeah.
gives you an Aki reference, I suppose you could say.
In my heart, this I want this engine to get used for like a spiritual successor to VPW.
Yeah. Oh, that would be
But I
nice.
mean, if all we get is a spiritual successor to Revenge, I mean, I'm not going to complain too hard.
Can you imagine if they like did some like tomfoolery like KOC style, and you had like a New Japan game and an AEW game, and you could somehow merge the games into 2-1?
That would be sweet. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
also seen people floating the idea of just like licensing New Japan to do DLC for the AEW game, and
Yeah.
I'll take it.
But the thing with that is I would want like the New Japan rings and stuff like that, like they did for Fire Pro. So like if you're gonna put New Japan
Yeah,
wrestlers, I want New Japan rings and arenas too.
that was one of the things I saw floated. Like you get the Forbidden Door arena and you get like the Wrestle Kingdom arena.
That'd be cool, yeah.
And I'm
Yeah,
just sitting here like, okay, what about Cork and Hall though?
exactly, yeah. Because they're Korakuen and Wrestle Kingdom 2 was like the best one that's in a wrestling game, I think.
Yeah, it looks exactly like not just how like Korakuen looked for New Japan in 2007, but like they still used that setup at Korakuen for like years after it. Granted,
Yeah.
that as the crowds increased, the video screen got like moved like onto the wall,
hmm
but they still had the fucking video screen on the wall in like 2014, 2015.
Although they did use that in the WWE games as well. Like they recreated it for that too, and it didn't look as good as it did in Wrestle Kingdom.
Right, because they have to do the bullshit like this, like the entrance is like here
Yeah.
instead of just. I don't need fucking entrances in every arena. I
No.
don't. I don't care.
No, I don't. I'll watch an entrance once and then I don't need to see it again.
That's why like the big argument about like they don't have full entrances and fight forever. Like who gives a shit?
Yeah, I don't. I couldn't give a
You
shit.
you mean to tell me you watch that canned animation every goddamn time you play a match?
Yeah. No, I don't need them.
Yeah, no, like the coolest thing any game ever did with entrances was Legends of Wrestling 1, giving you like multiple buttons you could press to do taunts and like getting the game to glitch and have Jimmy Snuka like slapping hands with like fans that weren't actually there.
I think like the best entrances in a wrestling game are maybe the original All Star Pro Wrestling.
I mean, the
Because
Riki Dozan entrance.
yes, but also like the regular wrestlers as well, because it's very like New Japan style. Like the lights on the entranceway on the entrance stage, like with Muta's theme song, the lights move with his theme, and it's got that New Japan flavor. As to where by the time they got to All Star Pro Wrestling 3, they had different promotions in the game, so everything just sort of had this generic feeling. Like it wasn't representing New Japan anymore. It was representing everyone. So, and I mean, there was great entrances at 3. Don't get me wrong. Like Scorpio was an all-time great entrance, but it didn't feel like it was copying a single product. It was just like, well, here's generic entrances for the most part. I felt.
You know, I got to point this out. Nobody's ever ripped the All Star Pro Wrestling 3 soundtrack, and I want that fucking Vader theme song from that game just because of the intro. Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
What was like? What did he say? Like, you can hit me harder than that. My mama hits
You can
harder
hit
than
me
that.
harder than that. Yeah, like he's just egging on his opponent or whatever.
I
And
I had that
the actual
somewhere.
song isn't even his fucking theme song either.
No, it's not.
It's like
No.
it's an original track.
Yeah. I had ripped that audio of his theme of him saying that, and I had it over his New Japan theme at one point. His Eyes
Oh,
of the
that's
World.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Vader themes, has his All Japan and Noah theme ever just sounded like generic Aki music to you?
A bit, yeah.
Like
Um,
he uses Eyes of the World for a bit
yeah,
in All Japan, but towards the end he has the shit that just sounds like VPW2 background music.
pretty much, yeah. Is it just me, or does some of the credits music in Revenge sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah.
That's what I've always thought, anyway.
Yeah, I never really yeah.
It's got like the bass and everything to it. Although I'm not really allowed to talk about Red Hot Chili Peppers as a Mr. Bungle fan, so
Well.
we don't bring those up. Anyway, so there is a few things to talk about with modern wrestling games that's going on. There's various independent projects in the works.
Yes.
So I think
And
we should.
also Mike Straw dropped a fucking update on WWE 2K23.
What was that? It's in development.
Okay, so you've caught on to the bit that I was about to do with Mike Straw's
Yeah,
updates.
yeah, I've been watching that. Yeah,
Uh, yeah, basically that they're happy with the engine of 2K22 and they're just going to be refining it for 2K23. And listen, I understand people need to make money. Mike Straw's never done anything to me personally. I just every time I look at his Twitter, I see a million shitty takes. But like being like, this is the last story before I ask you to give me money for my scoops, like maybe should have had something a little bit more substantial.
yeah,
And I'll be upfront. I didn't really like. I loved 2K22 for the first week because that's like the grief cycle with all of these fucking games. And I've got a comparison you might like. 2K22 just feels like a modern version of the Acclaim games where everybody has the same combos for their moves, and once you know the square circle is like the bread and butter combo for fucking everybody in the game, you never have to look at the moves list again.
yeah. I've never thought of it like that, but yeah, I think that that works actually. Um, I did go back and play it a few weeks ago, and like I've never played a game that crashed as many times as that did. Um, so I was setting up a universe mode. I had downloaded a bunch of wrestlers, so I'm going for universe, and actually this was before I went for universe. So I had reached the image limit, 1,000 images, which is bullshit. Like I'm sick of that shit. Um, and the game crashed. Now I remember from months ago when I was playing it regularly, somebody said that if you have all the images filled up, all your image slots, it'll do that because that makes sense, right? So delete some of your images and it shouldn't crash anymore. So I started setting up the universe, and I got to like Cesaro, and it crashed again. So then I restarted it and went back into the universe. It obviously didn't save any of my changes that I had made. So I went back into it, started editing a few more things, and it crashed again. And I did this several times, and I don't know why. And I got to the point where I don't care. Like I'm not going to touch Universe anymore. I was doing a bunch of exhibition matches because it feels like it's unusable to me. So
Jeez. I my last thing I did with that game, I think, was the Doink DLC the last DLC? No, the RVD DLC was the last DLC. I never downloaded that
yeah,
patch. I was like, oh, we're getting Matt Bourne Doink in a video game for the first time since Raw on the. No, you know what? Matt Bourne would have been the Doink in WrestleMania the arcade game. So
yeah,
27 years.
mm-hmm.
And I liked that the camera angles in his entrance were like kind of sort of what I remember they would do on like TV.
Mm-hmm.
But then the match started and it didn't feel like I was fucking playing as like Doink at all. It just everybody plays the same.
Yes,
Like playing as Yokozuna should fundamentally feel different than playing as the fucking Rock, and it doesn't.
yeah, and
Bad example, they're in the same family. Playing as Yokozuna should feel different than playing as Big Boss Man.
well, and another thing I brought this up to you before, but like if you're playing against the AI, no matter who it is, like it can be Yokozuna, it can be Kevin Nash. Within like 2 minutes of the match, they'll always go to the top rope for a diving attack.
Well, I mean, Kevin Nash is a legendary high flyer.
Oh, of course,
That
yeah. I
makes sense.
forgot
But
about
also,
his.
do you remember that was an issue with the SVR games?
No, I don't remember, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, the creator wrestlers. That was like a big thing for years. Was like, yep, my COD just fucking keeps going to the top rope for no reason.
Yeah, it's
Just keeps running to the top rope and doing elbow drops.
it's horrible. It like
But dude, they rebuilt the game from the ground up. There's no legacy issues anymore,
oh yeah, right.
right?
Yeah, of course.
My ass.
Yeah.
What a
Anyway,
fucking shitty game.
getting out of the I want to get out of the 2K because I it's depressing. I don't want to talk about it anymore. There is a few indie games in development. There's one by Steve Mason. So this game doesn't have a title yet. But this is a physics-based game, and it looks super interesting. I mean, we can get into it more at some point, but basically the thing that he showed off most recently was actually a glitch, where anytime he would try a strike, it would turn into a discus strike, so like a discus clothesline, a discus drop kick, or whatever, which is something that he's trying to turn into a feature now, and that's pretty damn cool, I think.
Yeah, I like the possibilities it opens up. Like
Yeah.
he had like footage of like discus drop kicks, which look insane. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that game overall, I think, looks.
I guess we should probably talk about Ultra Pro Wrestling.
We'll get there. I was gonna get to that next, but yeah, let's get into it. So Ultra Pro Wrestling, for those who don't know, is a game that's heavily inspired by Aki. Like the one of the moves they've showed off is a Falcon Arrow, which looks almost one for one from the Aki games, and they showed off a video a few weeks ago of Create a Wrestler. I wasn't expecting much from it, and it was maybe less than what I was expecting. It was like, here's the body types, you can change the height of a wrestler, and that was kind of it. My fear was that there wouldn't be any attires to show off or anything like that, and that's exactly what it was. On one hand, like, it's cool that they're providing updates, but like there was really nothing to that video, I thought.
I don't think I actually saw the video of Creator Wrestler mode. I
No.
saw the screenshots of like, here's what Creator Wrestler mode looks like. Here's pink and black like ring gear. Here's RVD's singlet,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then the obvious like here's the Mid Hudson Civic Center, which I mean you can get away with having a building that looks exactly like or a venue looks exactly like the venue in a video game because Fire Pro did it, KFC did it, All Star Pro did it, Wrestle Kingdom did it. But when you how do I put this? When you're posting screenshots of a menu and it's just a list of like trademarks
ECW.
that WWE owns the rights to with the ECW logo and the arena is clearly based on Hardcore Heaven 99, it feels like you're inviting potential like cease and desist and other legal action from WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And probably not the smartest idea. Maybe copyright law is different. I know they're based in I think England, so maybe it is different. I don't know. But we've talked about this like in DMs and stuff. It feels like it's mostly done for like engagement, which okay. What are you gonna do if the engagement gets you the wrong kind of attention?
Yeah.
I love the idea of multiple Aki inspired projects popping up that like have people that understand programming. Because as our first episode that we recorded or thought we did was about Pro Wrestling X, which is the patron saint of like I'm gonna promise you everything, and then it's been 2 decades. And with all due respect to Dave, you can look up Pro Wrestling X programmer. There's a Google website with the guy, and I'm not gonna say everything's true because I don't know, you don't know, we weren't involved. But there's a lot of really damning things that were said about Dave and PWX as a whole on that website. And to see that like Dave hasn't changed. Like it's still like when they take pictures, the screenshots of the signs in the crowd is still very edgelord stuff.
Yeah.
And Like we're still plugging along. Like I can't imagine being Dave and seeing the AEW game, which is on Unreal, which means it's going to be moddable, probably fairly easily too. Um, and it's the gameplay you promised. It's basically an openly moddable game, like, and it's going to be on PC. So what what niche does Pro Wrestling X serve at this point?
I don't
You know
know.
what I mean?
I the question is, when is it going to be done? When is it going to be fully playable? You know,
Oh, you know what? Nobody got to hear this, so we're gonna do the bit again. How old were you when Pro Wrestling X was when Pro Wrestling X and the Wrestling Gamers United newsletter started?
let's see. So it was 2002, right?
Yes.
I would have been about 15.
There was summer I turned 11,
Yeah.
and we still don't have those steel. Road Warrior Ace still doesn't have his fucking steel book for
Oh,
Wrestling X.
yeah. He's never going to get that. Sorry about that, pal. Yeah.
Shout outs to Road Warrior Ace. But I wish Ultra Pro the best. If we get like, and I dig that they're doing like the kind of cartoony graphics too. If we get a decent Aki style wrestling game on the computer that's like as freely tinkerable as that game seems to be, like that's fucking great.
For what they've said too, like they want to put that on consoles as well.
I'm curious, like if you'll be able to do image uploading on the console version because we know that's not going to be in the AEW game.
Yeah, yeah.
Per Fightful Select, they wanted those fucking mini games in over a community creations type feature.
Yeah. Thanks, Kenny. I just wanted to say about.
Listen, if one of those mini games was like a Danhausen dance along game instead of Penta, I'd forgive him for it.
There should be
That's all
one
I'm
where
gonna
you
say.
have to save Larry the dog. Like you're in like a backstage. It could be like a runner game, right? Like you're in the backstage area and you're carrying Larry, and there's like objects in the way, and you have to avoid them. That'd be great.
Ace Steel's chasing you down the hallway.
Why would you bite people, dude? Don't do that. You know.
It was Larry the dog. See, that's the thing that I don't understand is why Ace Steel's taken the fall for. He didn't throw the chair. He didn't bite Kenny. It was Larry.
Was it though?
But Ace Steel allegedly, as we are sitting here right now, we've been told several days ago that Ace Steel has lost his job because of Larry the dog.
See,
Unbelievable.
my idea was that Ace Steel would. You remember Jaws from 007?
Yes.
He would like get those teeth, and on the indie scene, he would start working as Jaws of Steel. That's
Good
my plan
lord.
for Ace Steel. This is why I'm not a booker for anybody. Anyway, for
No, that's why you should be a booker.
yeah, you're damn right. I should be. Ultra Pro. I just wanted to say like, those arenas they kind of got me hyped because, and part of that was because to see the ECW logos and stuff. But like, I'm a huge fan of like ramps that go to the ring apron. So to see like that and just the look of the arenas, I was like, this rules.
Yeah, seeing the Hera Arena one, like that was like a gut punch because Hera Arena is like I'm from Western Ohio. That's the big venue for like wrestling historically in my area. It's like an hour and 15 minutes away from my house.
Mhm.
So much shit happened there, and then Memorial Day 2019. There's probably a Wikipedia page for it. There was a massive tornado outbreak, and Hera Arena got absolutely smashed. My town did too. Like it was brutal. But like the worst part of it was like the next morning watching the news and like you see the damage done to Hera and it's like there's the biggest casualty out of anything.
Yeah.
That's a building that meant a lot. And it wasn't just like a wrestling venue. Like people when it was going to close down because I believe it ended up closing down for a little bit because like the big thing there was like a ham radio convention every year. It was called like a hamvention, whatever the fuck. And I think it moved, and then it was like, oh well, there's no reason to use Hera, and there were all these people posting like their Hera Arena memories, like people's like fucking junior high dances were in that building. People saw like hockey games in that building. I think somebody said they saw the fucking Harlem Globetrotters there, because like before the Nutter Center got built and before like University of Dayton Arena was like the largest venue of that type in the Dayton area, like Hera was the fucking place. Like if you're of a certain age, you have like a Hera Arena memory because it was just fucking like a big concert comes through, Hera Arena. fucking, Disturbed comes through in 2006, Hera Arena.
Did you go to any of the ham radio conventions?
No, I fucking wish I did. Unfortunately, I only went to the Ring of Honor show in April of 2012
Oh,
with my
nice.
uncle, and it was funny because my uncle had been the person that drove me to a bunch of WWE shows in Fort Wayne, and the one that I always look at in Fort Wayne was like Mother's Day '09. It was a SmackDown ECW joint house show, and like nobody's at the Coliseum because it's a matinee show on Mother's Day. So it's like just empty seats all over the fucking place. They don't even come back for 2 years, and when they come back in 2011, they run the Expo Center downstairs. It's like 2,000 people, and it's what Heroes and Legends runs when they do those conventions. So he was like, oh, this building sure is empty. We get to ROH in Dayton. They're not even using 2/3 of the fucking venue. So we're in the back third of the venue. There's a big pipe and drape for the entrance. And I'm looking and going, oh, there ain't gonna be that many people here, huh? At the end, I think I counted like 138, and my uncle, like the whole show's like, this is good wrestling. Why isn't there anybody here? And I'm like, it's fucking Sunday in April. People have shit to do. That was also the day of the Brock Lesnar John Cena Extreme Rules match. Amazing match. Wrong guy won. The ROH show was headlined by Davey Richards versus Adam Cole, it was a great match. I will say that. I also saw Kyle O'Reilly versus El Generico in a 20-minute draw. That match was awesome. And yeah, I seeing Hera Arena tickled me. I love that building.
The one thing that I was wondering, like, when I saw the ramp and everything, was like, since this guy is like obviously a huge fan of ECW, will you be able to go for the ramp like Bam Bam and Taz? Because that would be neat.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, like if you have like a finisher and you do your finisher on like a certain part of the ramp, yeah, I want to know. Because the camera angle seems to be like the No Mercy default, kind
Yeah,
of like, but then again, on like the shots he showed from the Hardcore Heaven arena, the camera was like on the stage facing the ring.
I think he said something about the camera
So
angles in the comments as well.
it'd be cool if you could change it.
Yeah, yeah. In the comments, he's also talked about working on the Budokan and like Wembley, Madison Square Garden. Yeah, from a visual point, that always gets me. Like as when I watched the Create a Wrestler video and it was very short, and I was like, there's nothing to this. But as soon as he showed off the arena, I was like, okay, this is cool. That's got my interest. So hopefully, let's see more of the gameplay, and hopefully it works out in the end.
The game is, I believe he said, a year to 2 years away, but
Yeah,
hopefully less than that.
yeah. Well, they're also
Work on
looking
the
for funding,
gameplay.
right?
Yeah, they have a Patreon that I've not signed up to
No, me either.
as of yet. I felt kind of burned signing up to the PWX Patreon, so it's kind of like never again.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think I'm in the same boat, actually. Move on to the next game. So there's another game called Casual Pro Wrestling, and this one that's been in the works for a while uses like a ragdoll system. They released a video last night, I believe it was. Looks pretty neat. It's a wrestler performing a springboard from the crowd onto the guardrail to a wrestler that's on the top rope. Did you see this
I
video?
saw that clip. Yeah, I saw that clip this morning, and that's neat.
It is, yeah.
I like everything I've seen from that game. It's a little. Maybe this is just because of like using ragdolls. It feels a little slow. It looks super promising.
We brought this up. Well, I brought it up in the last one, but one of the things that I really paid attention to was they had a wrestler in the ring doing a gorilla press to another wrestler, to three other wrestlers on the outside, and they all fell down in like a domino effect. And I thought, that's really not something you can do in wrestling games because you're forced to focus on one wrestler at a time. So to have multiple wrestlers react in the same way like that is surprisingly something that feels new for a wrestling game.
It's got a lot of potential for like big spots. Like I wonder if the dives will work the same.
So that's one to definitely keep an eye on. And the other one, Ultraviolent Pro Wrestling. Jackdo, am I pronouncing that correctly? I don't know.
Gakda, I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
He's a legendary No Mercy modder who has asked me on multiple occasions not to reference his No Mercy Zone username, and I will absolutely honor that here.
He worked on the
Um,
Arkham games, didn't he?
yeah,
Yeah. Ooh.
I think his bio actually says ex Arkham dev.
which are like
Um,
some of my favorite games of all time. So
oh yeah, Arkham Asylum's like my favorite superhero game, other than maybe like 2018 Spider-Man.
yeah, I consider Arkham Asylum the best one of the Arkham games as well because I thought it did a really good job of like making you feel claustrophobic, as opposed to like the later games in the series when they opened it up to a city. It didn't feel as right to me.
Yeah, my one knock on Asylum versus City is I think City has much better boss fights.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but
I love like the level design in Asylum is absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, I didn't like the Titan Joker boss at the end. I think the Clayface bullshit at the end of City was probably more fun in
hmm
my one playthrough of City. But I just the atmosphere, the music, the level design, just everything about Asylum worked really, except the boss fights.
yeah, it's
Poison Ivy, I'm looking at you.
yeah, it's a fantastic game. I did like the one with Killer Croc where you have to sort of like move slowly across the boards when he's
Yeah,
underneath the water. I thought that was really good.
because if you sprint, he just pops up and you're fucked.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Um,
like Resident Evil 4 when you're standing on the dock. If you shoot the water, Del Lego comes up and fucking eats you.
yeah. So he did release a tool, the tool that he's using for Ultraviolent, where sort of like Tony Hawk's park builder. So where you insert objects into the area for a death match. So as he shows in the video, you can add like trucks and like add like tables to the back of the trucks for people to fall on and stuff like that. It's such a neat idea.
I like the idea of potentially people making like really absurd, like throw somebody off like 100 foot point through like 50 tables kind of shit.
Do you think we'll be able to do like piranha death matches and shit like that?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think the deathmatch influence is mainly like
CZW.
Western death
Yeah,
matches. Yeah, like CZ Dub, IWA. I know he's I know he's working with like or was at one point working with people who like rig up deathmatch stuff for like actual indie companies.
yeah. They were adding like weapons to the game, right? Like
Yeah.
different ideas.
That kind of stuff. I mean, how do you make the piranha stuff work in a video game, I guess is my question.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. It was just an idea I threw out. Um, but
Yeah,
j-
it's I mean it would be fucking sweet. I don't know. I mean maybe it's well, I mean he has the skewer spot and that's just like a canned animation.
that's
So like you
true.
could probably do the piranha stuff. Like, dude, imagine doing like the Zandig fucking mother effing bomb off of some shit into like the piranhas.
Oh, it'd be cool. What about like
Yeah.
what about the bathhouse death match? We have a bunch of naked people running around.
I well,
What was in the, but that was IWA, right? Was that IWA or Big Japan?
that sounds like a big Japan
I
thing.
think it
They
was. I
they
think
do
it
a
was.
lot of things
I
that
think it
are
was IWA. Actually, it was Tarzan Goto was one of them in it and all that. And they had like the street market death match and the house death match where it's like Shoji Nakamaki in his home and
Oh, you're right.
like
It was IWA. It's
yeah,
Tarzan Goto and Mr. Ganasuke against the Headhunters.
yeah, and then the house death match where it's Shoji Nakamaki in his home eating like ramen or something, and then you just hear and then it shows Crypt Keeper like going through the streets with a baseball bat while little kids run away. It was tremendous. I love
See,
IWA.
that's what's missing from Japanese death matches these
Yeah,
days.
wacky shit. That was
Yeah,
the
screw all of this, like people getting their fucking arteries severed. I'm a huge Masashi Takeda fan. At some point, you got to stop going that direction and go the other way. I want a fucking piranha death match.
I hate
Jun Kasai, I'm talking to you.
I hate Takeda, and there's a reason for that. A personal reason. It's
Uh,
because he
okay.
landed on my foot at Bloodsport, and I thought I broke my foot.
Was it really his fault though?
Yes, it was him and Gresham. They fell out the ring, and they didn't have any guardrails. Also, I've got gout, so yeah, I was like, my foot's broken. Thankfully, it wasn't. But then
Do you
later
have
on,
gout because of that?
no, this is I had it before this. but like, yeah, it was super painful. So I was fine. But then later in the day, I was at Incredibly Strange Wrestling, and Daniel Maccabee did a dive, and his opponent was like, "Everybody get out the way because wrestling's a work, and let's make it obvious." And he was like, "Everyone get out of the way." And I was like, "Okay, well, I've moved a little bit. I should be out of the way." And they dove right into me. I felt like my arm sort of snapped back, but I was okay.
So do you also hate those guys?
Well, Maccabee sort of apologized on Twitter, so. But I think dives into crowd is pretty dumb. Like, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like getting hurt.
I gotta say I disagree. That Davey Richards dive he used to do was fucking sweet.
Maybe I should
He would
just.
do a toe pick on Hero and land in like the ninth row. It's
Maybe I just
amazing.
shouldn't sit on the floor then anymore. I guess.
God bless you, Davey Richards.
And his yeah.
If he shows up in AEW, he needs to do that dive.
See if it's like somebody that I don't know. No, what am I talking about? I don't like crowd dives. I just. But then again, ISW was like when you bought the tickets. The I think it said something like, if you get hurt, it's not our responsibility. And I was like, all right.
I think AEW tickets say that too, or they have like a little notice on the inside of the barricades, like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I just shouldn't have sat on the floor. I guess I'll sit in the balcony from now on. Whenever I go back, which is probably not for a long time.
Have Virtual Basement posted anything since that like tech demo, that one dude running around the ring before he got owned by Sandman?
No, I haven't seen anything.
That was a video that got posted. We
Um,
inched a little bit closer to actual gameplay though. God damn it.
yeah, I thought like the running looked good. I mean, there was a part where he stops himself on the ropes and he grabs onto the rope, and I thought that was a unique animation which I haven't seen before, and it looked pretty cool. But again, not much to it.
Yeah, I at this point, and we talked about this on one of the lost episodes, as we'll call them in the future, maybe. Um, they really, I get that it's easier to get. I think his name's Tony Cini to do like a voiceover or whatever.
Yeah,
But like, you have all these fucking big names signed. You can't be like, hey RVD, we've had you do a bunch of other bullshit for us. You wanna sit down and take 5 minutes to read these lines
hmm
so we can show off RVD doing like, walk cycles around the ring.
and you know what? The arenas they've showed off so far give me like a in your house vibe. Like they've all got like these customized arenas. Like Scott Steiner's got like a gym, and like I think Muhammad Hassan had like an outdoor arena or something, like a
Yeah,
desert
it's like
arena.
literally the middle of the fucking desert.
Yeah,
I went back and watched those with a friend of mine who like knew of the wrestling code, but had not like he'd followed along enough to know that like Sandman had been signed, RVD had been signed, etc.
yeah,
And I forgot how rough that Muhammad Hassan, or I guess just Hassan to stay ahead of the law. I forgot how rough that video was. Like it it seemed like the movement in the arms stopped before you get to like the actual shoulders. It just
yeah.
when that video first popped up, I laughed hard at it because like Twitter has treated that game
It's
for
the
so long like
it's the
it's
best.
this is it. This is going to be the best wrestling game ever. And actually that wasn't the first look. The first look was the shitty Enzo video.
Yeah,
But fuck that video and fuck Enzo. I don't care. The Hassan video, I was like, you like the promo he cut was all right. Like he was a good talker even in like 2005 and in 2004 in OVW too as Mark Magnus. But like watching that, I was like, how do you get like, oh, this is going to be amazing from this? This looks awful. And then at the end, they show him doing a camel clutch that's clearly the Steiner recliner.
yeah.
It's Hassan did like the actual like sit down and fucking wrench back camel clutch. You can't give him Scott Steiner's shit. Come on now.
Yeah. I mean, people jump on anything though, right? Like anything new, it's like this is the best thing of all time. I was like that when I was a kid, so I don't know how old people are that are responding to these videos and being like, "Oh, this is the next great wrestling game." Yeah, it's strange.
A lot of it I'm convinced now. A lot of the people that talk about wrestling games now are people who only grew up with like the modern stuff.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, if like your frame of reference for wrestling games is like SmackDown '07 to now, I kind of don't give a shit what your opinion is. I see people telling me like SVR '08 was like a great game.
I don't
SVR '08 was
remember it.
horrible. Okay, so I have to tell we're going to talk about Fire Pro and some other stuff. I swear to God, but I'm going to keep going on tangents because that's what I do. So SmackDown '08 actually leaked onto the torrent sites like 2 weeks early. That game came out like the second week of November, which felt kind of like tradition at that point. And that shit was on torrent sites like October the 18th. So more than 2 weeks out. And I may or may not have acquired the PSP and PS2 versions and played them and was like, listen, if this is how bad like the versions they don't care about are, imagine how bad the 360 version is going to be. And it was. Um, you know what might actually be the worst version of that game though?
What's up?
The PS3. The PS3 version runs at 30 frames per second. I rented that version when my 360 was like it red ring, but I still had a PS3. I rented that version. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this? And then I was like, oh, this is that whole 60 frames versus 30 frames thing, like actually made manifest. Jesus Christ. And then '08 is literally just that game with a different roster and that shitty Road to WrestleMania mode and that shitty career mode, which was the only. They took out the ability to like manually assign your created wrestler stats. Yeah, you had to go through the career mode and you had to wrestle in a way that like you had to wrestle basically how you wanted your stats upgraded. So don't do a bunch of running attacks or you're gonna have your fucking Samoa Joe with like a 95 speed. Which I mean I would give Joe 99 and everything because he's the fucking man.
I definitely played
But
it, but like, there's so many SmackDown versus Raw games that I have like no specific memory of them.
I've had a hankering to play TNA Impact again.
Oh no.
Listen, I had a lot of fun with that game. Like playing Ultimate X matches with that busted ass online.
I played that originally on the PS2, and then I bought it on PS3 like way after it came
Oh
out.
man, the 20-minute install.
Oh yes. And then I remember like I was just randomly playing it, and someone of my friends this was like, "What the hell are you doing playing this now?" I was like, I don't know. I've never played it on this before, so I'll give it a shot. But yeah,
I don't think
I didn't like it.
we've talked about this. I don't think it's a bad game.
Yeah,
I think
the moveset's a problem though.
go on. Yeah, that's my the gameplay's not the issue. The people that think the gameplay is bad are weirdos. It's perfectly fine. Was it the Aki inspired game that fucking flat earther dipshit AJ Styles promised us it would be? No. But the actual like mechanical gameplay perfectly fine. The fact that Samoa Joe and Abyss had the same moveset other than finishers is not. Especially because they mocapped like thousands of fucking animations and like a handful of those made it into the game.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the worst part was for like the longest time, because it didn't seem like Joe and AJ were ever gonna fucking leave, because you had no reason to think they were ever gonna leave. And it's like, oh, if I want to play a licensed wrestling game with Samoa Joe, I either have to dig out the modded PS2 for KOC2, and oh, what a problem that is to have, or I have to play the fucking TNA game where like I can play as Joe or I can play as Scott Steiner. They're fundamentally the same character.
yeah.
But the gameplay, not a problem at all. Like the gameplay's fine. If we would have gotten that sequel, it probably would have been a good game. And I'll say this, even with the movesets being what they are, I still think that game's better than SmackDown '09.
I mean, I really liked All Stars, so if they could have made something maybe closer to an arcade experience,
That's what they wanted to do.
yeah. So
Like
yeah.
I want to say it was the was it Game Informer that they yeah, it was Game Informer. Someone from fucking Midway actually went to Mike Regan's house and did like a sit down demo and was basically like, yeah, we wanted to make an arcade game, but Joe and AJ were really adamant the game had to be like this. But also imagine if the fucking TNA game was All Stars. Imagine what the reaction to that, like the the conventional wisdom surrounding that game would be now.
I mentioned this last
Damned
week.
if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, but like there was like a model leak of Jim Cornette for Impact 2, which seems to have disappeared from the internet now because I can't find it again. But that was definitely a thing back in the day.
I really, really want to play this game again.
Well, give it a shot. Doesn't hurt.
I need to find a PS3.
Oh well, yeah. If you don't have one on hand, that might be difficult.
Yeah.
So the topic for today: Fire Pro Wrestling.
Tremendous series. I own every game.
I don't, but like I own quite a few.
I have 3 copies of the premium edition of Fire Pro World if anybody listening to this wants one of them.
I'm trying to think of like what games do I have. I have I think Super Fire Pro for the Famicom, Queen Special, and
Great
then
game.
from there like Iron Slam 96, Fire Pro G, Returns, World.
I have them all, including the TurboGrafx 16 games, HAL Wrestling for the Game Boy, and Pro Wrestling for the NES, because that's where it all starts.
Yeah, then that's what I think. Obviously, the best point to start off from would be Masato Masuda, who designed Pro Wrestling for the NES.
Yeah, he's kind of like a genius. A lot of his ideas are still utilized. Like limb damage, that was that's a branch off of like how would submissions actually work in a video game? Isn't Combination Tag? I'm sorry. Isn't Combination Tag the first wrestling game to have like submission holds in it
I think
that
so.
aren't like
Yeah.
a finisher?
Yeah. So there's actually some quotes I found from this Medium article, and this was after he had passed away. There was an article written on Masuda, and he commented on the original Pro Wrestling, and what he said was Pro Wrestling featured the same grapple into technique gameplay as Fire Pro, but there was no timing element involved, so you could just use an auto fire controller and win every time. It was my desire to remedy this issue, which led me to the conclusion that implementing a timing mechanic was the only solution. And as you just mentioned regarding submissions, he said people were complaining about the lack of submission holds in Pro Wrestling, so I wanted to make sure they were included in Fire Pro. But just including them wouldn't provide much fun, so I got to thinking, what's the point of submission holds in wrestling? This led me to one of the theories behind Pro Wrestling, that of concentrated attack on a single body part to prevent the opponent using it effectively. In order for this to work in the game, I needed to include another parameter apart from stamina, so arms and legs could have damage inflicted on them.
And that's like really high level thinking.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not like the people who are paid to pretend to be wrestling fans that make the video games for a certain American wrestling promotion that is WWE, where like, oh, people sell for extended periods of time in 3-way matches. Let's shoehorn that into the game and then punish the player for getting up too early.
Yeah.
That's just like, how do I include these holds and make them fun? And one of the things about Fire Pro that I've always loved, and I love it more and more the older I get, they didn't craft the gameplay to do like one specific thing. They made it to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because the dev team were all wrestling fans, and on some level, that gameplay and the Aki gameplay too, because they're former human devs themselves. It was basically like, what happens if Giant Baba wrestles Hulk Hogan? Well, you make a game that does Hulk Hogan, and you make a game that does Giant Baba, and you have the ability to answer that question. It's much. How do I put this? It's much more. It's much easier to make a wrestling game that can hone in on like the Joshi style when you have like an engine that can do everything, because you can just zero in on the one thing.
That was a thing that was really attractive about Fire Pro, and sort of Aki as well, because I played the Aki games first, was getting to learn about basically the world of pro wrestling, because you know, you play a WWF game, you've only got WWF, WCW, you've only got WCW. And then these games like Hammerlock Wrestling or Natsume Championship Wrestling, I didn't know what they were at the time, what they really were. So getting into these, even when I first played Fire Pro for the first time, it was like I had a bit knowledge of New Japan and stuff, but it really opened the doors to like lucha and even shoot fighting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that Fire Pro is kind of my gateway to Japanese wrestling proper as well,
Yeah.
thanks to the game facts boards and the rename guide. Um, my first Fire Pro was the Game Boy Advance game, 2001. It was. I've heard people say it was a launch title. I didn't find it at a store until like around my birthday, and I have no clue how many hours I've dumped into that game. It's got to be in like my top 5 in terms of like most overall time played. And I'll never forget when it finally clicked in my head that like, okay, so Rock and Austin and all those guys I saw in EGM aren't in this game, but these guys are still based on real wrestlers. I was at the laundromat and I scrolled down through like the View Japan roster, as it were, and I saw a guy that looked exactly like Jushin Thunder Liger, and like all the available neurons in my brain went off, and I was like, oh, wait, I know him. And then like I just started scrolling down like all of the rosters, like, oh, that guy looks like Tenzon from WCW, and then I get to fucking the Noah roster, go all the way down, and like fucking I run up to my mom because I find a guy named the Guardian Saber. It's Vader, and I'm like, hey, remember I thought none of these guys were real wrestlers? Look at this guy. And mom's like, oh, it's just Vader. So I went fucking on Dogpile. That was the search engine of choice for me when I was 10. And I just put, are the wrestlers in Fire Pro real wrestlers? And somehow that got me to GameFAQs with the rename guide. And I spent like an entire weekend just fucking going through and renaming people. Because I was 10. I still spent time outside. That whole process would be like 45 minutes for me now. It was a literal 2-day endeavor for me when I was a kid. But it took me forever to figure out the gameplay because I was too stupid to do like the dojo mode. But once I did, oh god, I had so much fun. I used to like set up round robin tournaments with like ComSkip on, like just set up like 15, 16 guy round robin tournaments or some shit like that, and I would just like watch to see what Fire Pro would come up with.
I think that's like a big part of the fun with Fire Pro for me, especially these days, is just simming and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I used to not necessarily agree with like you have to sim to really get like maximum enjoyment out of Fire Pro. But I'm kind of firmly in that camp now because they give you like the super deep like AI editing, the logic. And if you understand how, and it can be a little overwhelming, but once you finally understand how to get that shit to work like properly, for lack of a better term,
yeah,
you can basically set anybody up to wrestle exactly like they would in real life. I never dared try that with King of Colosseum though. Can't read the menus very well. Also, gigantic movesets, super cumbersome in that regard.
Yeah, I don't with
which is why
King of Colosseum. I just use the default edits. I don't step out of my bounds. Let's say, because yeah, I'm not getting into that stuff. But you talked about how that was your first Fire Pro. Mine, so because I'm old, my memory doesn't work as well. I can't remember exactly the first time I saw Fire Pro was. So I do have a memory of using the library computer in like 1998, maybe 1999, and there was like this web-based game, this browser game, where you would choose a wrestler. One was Dustin Runnels, and it was in his like Jesus getup. And you just like go through the different pages and like build up your skills and stuff like that. But they used sprites from Super Fire Pro Wrestling X Premium. So that's one of the first times I remember seeing like Fire Pro graphics. The other time was in a magazine, and I could have sworn this was Game Fan, but I've looked at some of the old issues on archive.org, and I cannot find this article, or maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. Maybe it was actually Fire Pro G, I don't know. But I remember going through a magazine, and they had Fire Pro. It was either 6-Man Scramble or G, and in the screenshots there was Bret Hart and the Steiner Brothers. And I like freaked out. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I need to know what this is. Like, I need to play this. And my mom wouldn't let me buy the magazine because probably I didn't have any money at the time. But I would like take it all around the grocery store and read the whole thing. And then I think when I got home, I called Microplay, which was the local video game store. and I was like, "Hey, are you guys getting Fire Pro Wrestling?" And there was like a bit of silence, and he's like, "Isn't that an import?" And I was like, "Yeah." So are you getting it in? He's like, "We don't get in imports." And I was like, "Oh, okay, but if you do, can you like give me a call?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah." So that was the first time, the first two times anyway, that I saw Fire Pro, and then using that library computer, stuff like Ice Master's website, wrestling video games. I specifically remember like a QuickTime movie of Too Cold Scorpio doing moves in Super Fire Pro X Premium with Tag Team playing in the background, the song. And then I remember seeing the commercial for Fire Pro G, which is on YouTube if you haven't seen it, and it's got like these sick guitar riffs in it, and it's just the best thing. So then my first actual copy of Fire Pro was going to the Rage and buying therage.com and buying a copy of G. Everyone said go with the Rage, don't go with Buy Right because they'll rip you off. So I did, and then got it. I put a spring on above the what do you call it? Like the sensor on my PlayStation, and I put a cheat device in the back of it, and that's how I would play imports on it. I still remember the first match I had, which was Shinya Hashimoto and Masahiro Chono, so I must have had some more knowledge of New Japan at that point. And yeah, that's what really started off for me. I introduced some friends to it. One of my friends, I don't think he really had much of an opinion on it. The other one was like, "This game sucks." And I was like, "No, this is really good," but he never got into it. So,
I
but
still remember the first match I played in King of Colosseum 2. It was Samoa Joe versus Jushin Thunder Liger. Because that match had just happened in TNA, and I was really mad that Liger didn't beat Joe. And also, I realized how insane that sentence sounds.
it's funny,
But
like I don't remember my first matches in any games except for Fire Pro G. I always remember it was Hashimoto and Chono.
you know what? I think the only like match between the Musketeers I've ever played in a video game, and this is like really weird thinking about it now, is just Muto versus Chono or Muda versus Chono.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used Hashimoto to beat the fuck out of the other two.
One thing I
That's
forgot to
going to change
mention,
today, I think.
I forgot to mention this, but when I got G, I got a Dex drive, so I
Oh,
could download edits, and that shit was crazy.
I didn't have like a save device for the PS1. The only save devices I ever fucked with were the action replay disc with like a you got the shitty little 8 megabyte flash drive that wasn't good for shit. That was a big part of Fire Pro R for me. It was like just going on Fire Pro Club and like pillaging that website for anybody's save that had if they had an edit, like one motherfucker out of the 500 that you could have. Like I was taking the whole save. I shudder to think how much of like Summer '06 just died to me fucking like, oh, I gotta find a save with the ROH logo. So who are you taking from the save? I don't fucking want any body in the save. I just want the fucking logo. That was in the days before Workshop. Now I have like fucking 2,000 guys in Fire Pro on PC, and they're all Phil parents
Oh yeah,
conversions of people because I'm super lame and only use like the actual Fire Pro versions of guys.
Workshop has like completely changed the game, obviously. And you can also
I
like if you use like the mod pack too, you can have your own like you can add voices, so you don't have to use like the default grunts and stuff in the game.
I stopped fucking with the mod stuff a long time ago. I think like the last time I used the mods, we were still on like the original like UI for the game, not like the fire and chains and shit that are currently. I mean, I don't dislike the current UI for World and obviously the final UI for World,
hmm
but I kind of dig the old one more. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird.
I'm trying to remember it, and I cannot remember what it used to look like.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go find like old videos of that game.
Yeah.
Speaking of Fire Pro and Fire Pro World and the road to Fire Pro World, because we got to mention it now. Memories of Fire Pro HD.
Ugh. Um, I was really excited about it. I thought, all this shit, this sounds super cool, and I don't have anything against Sonny Bono. Like it's a shitty
Oh, I
joke.
do.
Well, I don't because like it was a shitty joke, but whatever. I'm 35, almost 36. I don't give a shit anymore. I mean, at the time, I actually shared his email address in the group chat because I was so pissed, and that I wasn't in on it. But like, I mean, whatever. But yeah, like the whole idea of it and the fact that some sites picked up on it, I was like, oh my god, this just adds to the
I
legitimacy of it, right?
I woke up and saw a blurb about it on the fucking Wrestling Observer Daily Update.
That might have been me.
So, so what do you? For those of you who don't know or remember, Fire Pro HD was a rib played on the community by Sonny Bone and like one of the admins. And it was
Yeah.
initially meant to just be like a little ha 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 April Fool's type thing. And then Sonny Bone decided, no, we've got to go like super galaxy brain with the description of all of the features in the game. And it got to the point like when I read the initial pitch, I was like, oh, that's all bullshit. That's none of this is fucking happening.
Yeah. I was very
One
very
second.
gullible, so
And he also, this is something that's lost to history. There was some bullshit about a Wii collection of all the Super Famicom Fire Pro games that was in the same blurb on the Observer website.
again, that was probably me. you could just submit stuff to Dave Meltzer, so I'd be like, I was probably super excited and was like, oh shit, I want everyone to know about this, so I probably submitted that.
I just remember like one of my friends who never played Fire Pro was like, dude, did you hear about this? And it's funny because a few years later when the video of the two K Dojo students at Chiba Bluefield locking up hit,
Yeah.
that same friend was the one that fucking messaged it to me. It's like, dude. And I woke up and I'm like half awake and the video loads in like 240p. And I'm like, oh, those graphics look really nice. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, no. Watch it in HD. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I don't remember who they are now, but somebody like outed like who the two of them were.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's neat. And there was like so much anxiety. I remember going into World's announcement where it was like, what's it going to be? What system's it going to be on? Is it going to be Japan only? And like the first trailer dropped and like the fucking community, as Cornette would say, threw the fucking babies in the air. Everybody was happy. And then we found out gradients weren't in the game and the community tried to burn itself down. That was fun.
Oh yeah.
I get it, but also at the same time, like you have everything else you've always wanted. And there's that one thing that ruins it for you. Okay, sure. The New Japan collaboration was crazy because it's the first time they'd done anything licensed with like a men's promotion. There was what is there, 3 Joshi games? There's the PC Engine CD one, Queen Special, and Dream Slam.
Yeah. Yep.
Am I missing one?
I think that's it. I could be missing one as well, but I that sounds about right to me. I have to look at the Wikipedia.
And then obviously we got Stardom. There was a DDT DLC found, like markers for files found in the game, and then a patch dropped and those mysteriously vanished.
I don't
Good
remember hearing
riddance,
that.
I guess. Yeah, that was on Critical Club. Somebody found like markers for like a DDT DLC. I say good riddance, but if it would have gotten me like an official licensed Jun Akiyama, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
I loved Fire Pro World. My biggest issue with it was when it launched on console, the amount of shit you got with that game for the price they were charging was not. You can't charge $50 for what you're getting with that game.
No, I've honestly barely touched the PS4 version since I bought it, really.
So I own. I'm gonna admit this out loud.
Uh-oh.
I own the game digitally in English and Japanese. I have the US physical release, day 1 edition, and then I have 3 of the premium edition. Now, granted, 2 of those premium editions I bought for other people that said they couldn't, like, Play Asia won't take my card. Can you help me out? And then they fucking ghosted me when I was like, okay, got it in. Time to pay.
Was one of them
So,
the guy
like,
that was one of them the guy that kept posting on Fire Pro Club that was like, I stepped on my disc. Can someone send me a copy? Do you remember that guy?
Oh God, I forgot all about him.
He did it all the time. He was like, I stepped on my disc. Can someone send me an ISO of this game?
Right, because you would have people that would go on Fire Pro Club all the time, like, oh man, my PS2 died and I can't play my
It
copy of
was
the
the
game on
same
PC.
guy.
Does anybody have an ISO?
It was the same
Yeah,
guy every time.
it was like some fucking bullshit thing. Like, can somebody send me the ISO? Or
Yeah.
like one time it was like, oh, my system died, and I was just like, rip the fucking game yourself, bro.
My
Like,
brother's in the hospital. Can you send me the game? But he wasn't one of them,
it
right?
was
He didn't ask you to buy a copy.
no, no, it wasn't him. I do remember Phil Parent. Shout outs to Phil. He's a good friend of mine. Telling everybody when the game was like $20 in early access to like gift copies of it to your friends so the game was more successful.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
And I just remember telling, I worked at a grocery store at the time for like sub minimum wage. And I was like, Phil, I'm not going to bring home $200 this week on this paycheck. I can't afford, I can barely afford the one copy I'm buying for myself.
You know,
I
no.
can't.
Now I'm wondering if I did do that. Maybe I did. Maybe I did do that. I don't.
So I have a funny story about the night that Fire Pro World launched on early access. I had the money in my bank account because I was going to use PayPal to pay on Steam, right?
Yeah.
And Steam told me to go fuck myself and wouldn't let me use my bank account on PayPal. So I being a resourceful young man, I had $20 still sitting in my account. I actually was like, "Hey, mom, do you want to give me a ride to Walmart real quick?" Because I was going to use the fucking ATM. Bank ATM wasn't working that night. So I end up going into Walmart. I get fronted $20 that I have to give back the next morning, which obviously I had no problem doing. I was desperate and I wanted to play Fire Pro. I had 3 days off. I did not want to wait till the next morning. And I go into Walmart. By the way, this is in the middle of a tornado warning.
Nice.
I buy the fucking Steam card and I go home and like the game takes forever to download because it's Steam.
Yeah.
And for all the nice things I can say about Steam, I can also say it should not take 2.5 hours to download a game fucking Fire Pro size when I have like super high speed internet. Um, and the first thing I did was I discovered how to use the workshop and I downloaded Phil Parent's Fire Pro Z, Kobashi, and Masawa because I think those were the only versions that he had up of those guys. And I played that one match like all night.
Nice. I don't remember.
Kobashi went over in every one of those matches, by
I
the
don't
way.
remember what I
Fucking
first did,
fraud.
but I definitely like jumped on it, the second it was available. I know that. But you realize you've skipped a game, right? Like you went from Fire Pro HD to World, but you're forgetting something in between.
Fire Pro and Mobage.
No, not quite.
Um, hmm.
Fire Pro Wrestling for the Xbox 360.
Oh yeah, no, Fire Pro HD. That was a hoax. Remember?
No, no, dude. We're talking about Fire
I'm
Pro.
not gonna acknowledge that game, no matter how hard you try.
I actually spent a good amount of time in that game. It was sad the amount of time I spent on it, I would say. I wanted to find something that I would like. I played it online, and at least playing with other people was like somewhat fun, but yeah, that had no right being called Fire Pro.
I'd still like to see the Fire Pro in Mobage, which was a mobile phone game, because there's so many people in that game that you're never gonna get a proper Fire Pro version of ever again. Like fucking heavyweight champion Aragoshi Ozaki, Swama, Kenny Omega makes his Fire Pro debut in that game. Shuji Ishikawa is in that game. Kota Ibushi is in that game. Fucking like peak Togi Makabe is in that game, and I say peak because like he would have been statted much higher. And what did the game come out in 2012 than
Yeah,
he
so
fucking was in 2018?
IWGP
And
champion. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that title win at Wrestling Dentaku 2010 was wonderful. Shout outs to Makabe, should have won the belt sooner. And also, honestly, Goto in that game is probably statted higher than he would have been in Fire Pro World as well, because in 2012 they hadn't completely fucking buried Hiroki Goto to the point that nobody wanted to see him ever again.
That poor guy. Every time I see him on like a show, I'm like, oh yeah, remember when it seemed like he was gonna be a big thing and like it never really happened? Sadly.
Remember when people tried to pretend like he was never over, even though you can go load up the title match with him and Tanahashi from 2007, where the crowd's going nuts for
Oh
everything
yeah,
he
he was. He
does?
definitely was. Of course.
Remember when he fucking worked Muda at the Tokyo Dome 2 months later, and everybody's like, "Oh no, they're putting him with Muda. They clearly
Uh,
there's clearly some big plans for him." And then he
uh,
wins the fucking G1,
yeah.
and then he wins like 200 New Japan Cups, and then he wins the Intercontinental title, but never the heavyweight title.
Well, he's not
Fuck you,
on.
Ghetto.
He's not on the level of Tadao Yatsuda, former IWGP Heavyweight Champion.
Well, Yasuda was late, as we all know, as Don Fry will famously remind us. I
He,
um I don't really have a problem with Yasuda being part of the IWGP title lineage. I
I
do have a
do.
problem with Jay White being part of. No, listen. Yasuda's incredibly funny. He was like a gambling addict. That shit's hilarious. He's the Japanese wrestling version of Charles Barkley.
You
Okay,
know,
that's wrong. Chuck probably doesn't have any gambling. Michael Jordan.
well,
Yasuda is Japanese wrestling's Michael Jordan.
but
That makes
I
him incredibly
the
cool.
first time I saw him was like this fat open match orange trunks dude with a funny mustache, and I was like, this guy's shit. He's never gonna become anything. And then he wins like what one shoot fight, and all of a sudden he's the IWGP champion. What
Yeah,
the fuck?
ruled.
No, it
He
didn't.
beats Nagata in that tournament final, by the way,
Oh,
and then like a month later loses the belt to Nagata, and then Nagata goes on his like year-long title reign that was absolutely tremendous.
do you remember the whole mess with like what was it? Was it Fujita beating Kensuke Sasaki in like 4 minutes or something like that?
Okay, so I had never seen this match. I'd only heard about it, and for a while, New Japan's video company was releasing these Blu-ray sets called IWGP Complete Box.
Hmm.
Don't let the name fool you. There's tons of clip matches and matches that are just missing if they involve Brock Lesnar or Naoya Ogawa. Um, but on this set in widescreen HD, because TV Asahi has fucking like actual widescreen high def native recordings of a lot of New Japan stuff from like '03, '04, '05 that we're never going to get outside of these sets. I got to watch this match. Fujita beats the fuck out of Kensuke and then puts him in a rear naked choke and just lays down on the mat. Kensuke gets choked unconscious. They count three. Kensuke gets woken up, handed the belt, and Fujita just sells it like, I don't give a fuck. Just leaves the ring.
I don't think I was
I'm the
selling.
biggest Kazuyuki Fujita fan, huh?
I don't think he was selling. I just don't think he didn't give a fuck. Fujita never gives a fuck.
No, and that's part of what I love about him, but also like I'm the biggest Kazuyuki Fujita fan anybody's ever met in their life. I've been a fan of that guy since like I first saw him. But if I were in a position of power at that point, when he came back in '05, I wouldn't have given him the fucking belt again.
No.
Maybe I would have let him get to the G1 final because that's all in service to Chono winning his final G1. Like, not his final, the last G1 that he wins. But like having him beat Tenzan for the belt and then you do the little fuckhead three-way with Brock, no,
Yeah,
no.
that was an interesting era of New Japan. I know. A lot of people
I
talk
love
shit
it.
on that. Wanted to go back to Fire Pro for a second. Suda51 ends up joining the team, right? And I
Yep.
think the first game he worked on was it Super Fire Pro Wrestling 2?
It's either two or three. I know where we're going with this. It's Super Fire Pro Special.
Yeah. So, well, I wasn't actually going to talk about the storyline because I know that's the thing he's like most famous for.
So what happens is your wrestler picks somehow during the story you either get Undertaker, Rick Rude, or Sting as your mentor.
Okay.
And then Ric Flair kills that motherfucker in the ring, and then you fight Ric Flair to the death. And after you beat Ric Flair, your character, having lost his girlfriend or whatever, which is Akira Maeda's sister, by the way, kills himself. Now take everything that I just said into totality. Take it all into consideration. Just let it marinate for a second. All I'm saying is if that game dropped when nobody was buying the WWF games over here, that's Pepsi. I swear to God that I'm drinking. If that game would have dropped here in 1994, it would have changed everything. Imagine if somebody brought the plot of that game to Vince McMahon in 1994 or 1998. Jesus Christ.
I was just thinking. I mean, we talked about this last week in the unreleased episode or the lost episode, the lost levels. Jesse Ventura's Wrestling Superstars, which was supposed to be basically a port of Thunder Pro Wrestling Retsuden, which was a game released on the Mega Drive, which was essentially Fire Pro. I mean, it didn't have the Fire Pro name, but it was essentially Fire Pro for the Mega Drive.
Yeah, it's basically just like the TurboGrafx Fire Pro games in terms of like graphics and sound.
Now you've played the ROM, right?
Yeah, if you've played like even Super Fire Pro, basically the gameplay's the exact same.
Did it have like the I don't know if it was finished or not, but did it have like Mark Hulk Hogan and other people like that?
I want to say there's a fake Hogan in that game. I'm almost certain there's a fake Vader because that's who I played as.
Because if people don't know that story, the story was that Jesse Ventura signed a deal with DreamWorks, not that famous DreamWorks, but another DreamWorks, to release the game in the US, and that's what's started as falling out with WWF. Vince McMahon said, "If you're going to do this, you're not going to be employed by us anymore." And Jesse basically said, "Fuck you," and went on to promote it at conventions. Yet the game was never released, and I haven't found any reason as to why it wasn't released, and I'm wondering if it's because the finished version would have had, fake Hulk Hogan without colors edited, so maybe WWF got word of that and put a kibosh on it?
It could also be the title was Wrestling Superstars. I'm
Yes.
sure I'm sure whoever held the would the WWF have held that trademark since that was the name of their toy line? Or would Acclaim have had that since it was LJN and they owned LJN?
It might be Acclaim, because didn't WWE edit out Wrestling Superstars on their banners on like 24/7 when that was a thing?
Yeah, Superstars of Wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some dude, when they let that trademark lapse, some dude bought it in like 1991. It's why the show changes to just being Superstars either in like late 91 or early 92.
Okay, so yeah, that could have been a factor as well, calling it Wrestling Superstars. But for whatever reason, I guess we'll never really know. But that game was not released. But I guess it was basically finished on that ROM there.
You can find the ROM rather easily.
Yeah, I've tried to play it. Whatever reason, it crashes on me every time I try.
What Genesis emulator are you using?
I don't even know. I was running it through RetroArch, but maybe I should just try another one. Did you ever spend much time with Fire Pro Wrestling X Premium?
X Premium? Yeah, actually, I was going to mention this when you were talking about the Fire Pro animations and stuff. That was a huge deal on the internet in like the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yes, yep.
Like people just going in and creating like they would create a wrestler and like just rip an entire freaking sprite sheet, and you would see people doing like these picture perfect like Rob Van Dam 5-star frog splashes, and you'd be like, how the fuck what game is that? And they're like, oh no, it's an animation I put together
Yeah, and they would do like crazy
using
shit, like
sprites.
balcony dives through tables, multiple tables, and stuff like that. It was sort of like a Fire Pro Endorphin Championship Wrestling, sort of that sort of idea where people do some wacky shit with it.
That's a very good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine over the course of like 2 weeks actually made me a pretty damn good GIF of Rhino hitting Rob Van Dam with a gore. I wish I still had it. That was fucking 2 decades and several computers ago.
That's some of the stuff that I discovered too. Like again, on those library computers, would be seeing animations and stuff like that, which was like, holy shit, I need to play this stuff. Where can I get it?
I was really disappointed when I played like X Premium and realized like a lot of the stuff that I thought was
It's
really cool that
not
I
there.
saw people make animations of, like none of that shit's in the game.
You know
But
what
then
the
also it's like it's a game from '96. Why the fuck would there be tables?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that actually blew my mind about Fire Pro G when I first got that was going through like all the grunts and stuff on the game, the sound files, and you would just hear like straight up EC fucking W, and I was like, what the hell? They actually say ECW in the game. That was crazy. There's like not only did they say ECW, but I'm playing a wrestling game where they swear freely. That's new.
Yeah, and Fire Pro World has like Tama Tonga yelling or Tonga Loa actually yelling "eat shit,"
Yeah, yeah.
which I thought was interesting because that game's got a fucking T rating.
Yeah, and like G was like they had like just not swearing but like taunts like Viva Mexico and come on baby, and it was like you didn't get stuff like that in wrestling games back then. Like you had some like grunts and stuff and like attitude and stuff, but like having wrestlers actually say things was sort of new for the most part. So then going from uh, G, so I think for a lot of people that started with Six Man Scramble or earlier, to go from Six Man Scramble to G wasn't like the a huge leap.
No, it
Graphically,
wasn't.
yeah, graphically there's not that big of a difference. But for me, when I started with G, when Fire Pro D came out on the Dreamcast, that was quite a big difference on my end. The sprites were a lot cleaner, the graphics looked a lot smoother. Obviously, being on the Dreamcast. Do you have any memories of playing D?
Yeah, so I got Fire Pro D actually I think after I got Fire Pro R. D was the holy grail of wrestling games to me because when I was a kid, I would go on like VG Museum and like other websites and I would see the edit packs people were making.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought like, oh fuck, this game has Vampiro. Never thinking like, no, it's somebody's edit. But I wanted to play that game for so long, and then obviously getting into like the Game Boy Advance game and being like, well, the Dreamcast one's even better because it's better graphics and more wrestlers in the ring at once. Because that was the first game that had 8 wrestlers on screen for the Fire Pro series.
Yeah.
And I no, you know what? Actually, I got D in the mail like 2 weeks before I got R, but I bought D after I bought R. It's just stupid how this stuff works out sometimes. Playing D for the first time, I did the little like main menu cheat code to unlock everything.
Yeah.
So like the first thing me and my friend Aaron, who I haven't seen in a long time, did was we played like an 8 Andre the Giant Battle Royal, all the same costume because we were 14 and chaotic. Um, but playing that game, especially after years of like, I had the hard copies of the GBA games, and I'd played the Super Famicom games on like SNES 9X or whatever the fuck emulator I was using. Playing D for the first time, and also after seeing all of the edit packs and like all of the like fan lore built up around how great D was, I wasn't disappointed. Like I played that game and was like, yeah, you know what? If I didn't get KOC 2 3 weeks ago, this would be the best wrestling game I've ever played.
So the first time I played D was I've never actually bought a copy of it, and I've always thought about like going back and getting one. I had like two burnt copies from two different people within like days, maybe even before it was officially released. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, I spent so much time with that game. And it was also the first game that had like the new style barbed wire matches. G had like the barbed wire electrified cage, which I still miss to be honest. But D had
Yeah,
those barbed wire matches, and you know this. It still had WWF and WCW at that time, and you could download. You remember they had the move packs. You could download Moto
yeah,
Shining Wizard and stuff like that.
yeah. That shit was so cool to me. Like they just dropped free animations of like people's moves. What a concept!
Yeah,
Just give people moves for free through the internet.
yeah. So D was a big deal. I remember it being a big deal on the internet. I used to always
Oh
listen.
yeah,
I was used to listen to Wrestling Observer Live, and people would actually like send in emails every week, like talking about how great it was to Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, and they were like, "Damn, we might have to buy this game," and I don't think they ever did. But I remember one email that I sent in that Dave read on the air, and it was kind of a dumb email. You know, I was just being a dumb kid, where I talked about like how it was super realistic, and I was playing as Ric Flair. Ric Flair was on a battle royal and he was eliminating everyone, and Dave was like, "Well, that wouldn't happen." And then I was like, and I ended the email with like, "It completes everything," and I don't even know what I meant by that. And Dave was just like, "Yeah, okay." But they used to get like emails about it all the time.
Yeah, that was I just got on the internet like the end of 2000, but you couldn't look even if you were me and you were just looking at like the WWF game like discussions, especially once like No Mercy's been out for a little bit, SmackDown 2's been out for a little bit. It's like March of '01 and the Fire Pro game launches in Japan on the Game Boy Advance. I think D comes out around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It was impossible to escape people talking about Fire Pro D, even if it was just like, hey, does anybody have a No Mercy create a wrestler formula for Rhino? Because that's where I was in my life at the age of 10.
Yeah.
Like you would just have it would be like there's one post on the No Mercy board from like that day, and then there's like five for Fire Pro on a No Mercy board. It was insane. Like maybe it was a concerted effort by the community to just annoy everybody into buying the game. I mean, it eventually worked on me. So, shout outs. But that, yeah, no, I would believe the thing about Observer Radio. I remember when they had Brian Williams and somebody else from THQ on to talk about like WWE 13 or whatever the fuck it was. They talked about in the interview like, oh, we play Fire Pro. We're big Fire Pro fans. Same interview where they shit on No Mercy. That's at least my memory of it. And it's like you go onto like a discussion thread about it, and it's all these people who are like diehard import gamers who are like, oh, if they love Fire Pro so much, why the fuck don't we have all of this stuff? And you have like the WWE fans who are just like, I hope Kelly's got an updated entrance this year. And there's like 7 posts under with like, where's the fucking CPU logic at, Brian? Why can't we fully edit attires yet, Brian?
Right. I was just looking it up, and you did mention D was released March 1st, 2001. The Japanese release of Fire Pro Wrestling on the Game Boy was March 21st, so that was a hell of a month.
So the Fire Pro on Game Boy Advance comes out, I think, the day of the first 01 show?
I'm not looking up 01.
Oh, that's fine, motherfucker. I am. Where's 01?
I have that show.
I want to say that's I might be right on that, but I also might be wrong.
That sounds about right.
Oh no, 3201.
Oh, okay.
3201's the first 01 show.
Well, that's like 3-2. That would be like the day after Fire Pro comes out.
The day after D.
Yeah.
So fucking D launches. Aren't the 01 guys still on the New Japan roster in that game?
I believe they are. Yeah.
So this whole ass new promotion launches the day after Fire Pro D comes out, and fucking you gotta move a whole bunch of people around on that one. Hell of a main event on this show though. Misawa and Akiyama against Hashimoto and Nagata. That's a great match.
Was 01 and D? Now I'm looking it up. Or maybe they just had like a rip-off logo in the game.
Because I know 01 starts as like an invasion angle.
Yeah.
And then it wraps around to like, oh nope, it's its own company.
Let me see. Move list and guide by Ice Master.
Shout outs to Ice Master, wherever they're at. This moment in time.
The first time I do remember the first time I saw D, it was in the hashtag Fire Pro on IRC, and which I think was actually just a straight up link to Ice Master's site. They'd be like, "Oh shit, look, there's a new Fire Pro," and everyone was going crazy about it. Rings, there's no 01 ring, obviously, because it hadn't actually started at that point. Give me a list of promotions.
Probably not a good time to mention. I just passed a bunch of Volcon videos on YouTube then.
Ooh, they don't have a list of promotions. They have a list of rings. So, but I'm guessing that 01 was actually not in the game at that point. Shinya
that
Hashimoto
would be my
guide.
best guess.
Well, let's check. The Shinya Hashimoto guide should mention what promotion he's in. You would think. I think they did have a swirl logo though, and like as a default logo to choose from. Shinya Hashimoto joined New Japan Pro Wrestling, yada yada yada. It doesn't mention the promotion he was in.
Okay, hold on. This is riveting audio, I'm sure, for everybody
Oh, I can
listening.
delete this. I don't.
There's a
I'm
no. We're leaving this in because I'm about to find the answer.
okay.
So on Critical Club, there used to be a list of like all of the fake names in the Fire Pro games, and I'm going to be heartbroken if that fucking thread is gone now. Oh, nope, found it. Let's go. All right,
Freelance.
Fire Pro Wrestling D.
It says Hashimoto's freelance.
Yeah, Big Hosh is not in the New Japan
Ah,
roster.
yeah. So they didn't have 0-1. They just put them in freelance.
Wait, hold on. Time out, time out. Hashimoto is the fourth guy listed in freelance.
So who was above them?
The three above him, the Great Kabuki,
Huh?
Takahiro Murahama, and Super Delphin.
What? That's a strange order.
I mean, yeah.
Why would?
Also, shout outs to Rob Van Dam's Fire Pro D name, which was Log Random, which is probably spelled Log Random, something like that. I don't know. I don't have the
That
hiragana
sounds
right in
about
front of me
right.
for it.
Did you ever play Iron Slam 96, by the way?
Yeah, I did. I had a fucking video on YouTube a long time ago of me just commentating over like some AI matches and me just being like, yeah, people shit on this game and I don't really think it's that bad. And then Hanson proceeds to do an elbow drop like 47 fucking times.
So
And I just by the end of the video was like, well,
I
I
was
think it's a perfectly fine game. Like if you take what Fire Pro was gameplay wise and aesthetically and make it a 3D game in the year 1996, that's what it is.
I was talking about this on Twitter yesterday with C Drive. I'm a bit confused about the timeline because, for those who don't know, Shuji Yoshida was or is currently the CEO of Sin Sophia, which used to be Aki, which before that was the Man Breeze, and they were the developers of WCW versus the World and of course all the Aki games. But before he left to form Aki, he worked at Human, and from what I could find, him and his team, which according to one source I found was called Muscle, they worked on Iron Slam 96. But then I found an interview with Suda51 where he talks about Yoshida and sort of implies that he left the company before that game was released. So I'm wondering, did his team work on Iron Slam 96 and then left before the release, maybe?
That seems to line up with what I remember the narrative being.
Because
Was they were unhappy with the game that they made and basically left to make the game that they wanted to make.
I think you can see the influence for WCW versus the World in Iron Slam 96.
Yeah.
There's just,
I think the influence of like Tokon on versus the world's a lot more prevalent
yeah.
though, kinda in a weird way.
I think maybe it's just me looking at the graphical style because you've got like the Tokon's like it's 3D, but it's quite different than versus the World and Iron Slam 96, and I would say those two games are closer graphically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking at a video of Iron Slam 96 last night, and then I read a guide, and one of the things that it said in the guide was like it was criticized at the time for its jerky animations and slow gameplay. Maybe I need to go back and look at WCW versus the World, but it doesn't really seem that much slower than that game. In some videos it seemed kind of faster, and the animations didn't really look that bad to me. Like Hogan's got his own signature punch, which versus the World I don't remember him having. There was some springboard dives on the outside that looked pretty good for the time at least.
Yeah, I remember all of the animations looking perfectly fine
Yeah.
in Iron Slam 96.
I didn't get
I
Iron
just had that
Slam.
one moment I simmed a Hanson match and he decided to do 435 elbow drops.
Yeah. I didn't get Iron Slam 96 like a physical copy and play it until years later, so obviously it was even hard to judge at that time, fairly yet. Anyway, but I certainly can understand the problems people had with it, like being a slower game, being 3D, only being a handful of characters in a Fire Pro game. and limited as to what you can do really with gameplay wise. So I can understand like obviously where the problems came from. But I'm also wondering like what the issue was with the team and why they basically quit. Because like what limitations Human put on them. Like did they say like no, this is Fire Pro, there's got to be an automatic grapple? Because when you look at WCW versus the World, obviously you initiate the grapple by pressing the circle button. So was that something maybe they wanted to
Right.
implement, and like Human was like, no, it's got to be this way?
Maybe they didn't want to do something that was like a 1-to-1 of Fire Pro. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they carried a lot of the Fire Pro design philosophy over, like creating an engine that like can respectfully do every style of wrestling. And that's one of the things I love about the Aki engine is like they were able to like laser focus in on like WCW and the WWF and discrediting like World Tour because that's not like a real that's not a that's VPW. It's not a WCW game.
yeah,
Revenge feels exactly like WCW in '98, and the two WWF games feel exactly like the WWF in '99 and 2000.
yeah. And as fun as World Tour was back in the day, yeah, like I've mentioned this to you before, but like being a kid and playing that game, but not really having a huge grasp of Japanese wrestling. The rings were very Japanese. I mean, the WCW ring is blue with a white border. It was a New Japan ring, but like I didn't really know that at the time. I just knew that what I was playing didn't look like WCW. So when Revenge came out and you've got all the arenas and stuff, I was like, no, holy shit, this is actually a WCW game,
Right.
which felt like a huge deal at the time.
I really wish we could have gotten like an American wrestling game in like the mid '90s or like even the early 2000s with the Fire Pro engine. Just for shits and gigs, imagine if Paul Heyman made the deal to get like Fire Pro ECW.
Yeah, that'd have been interesting.
Spike wouldn't have made a goddamn dime
Oh no.
off of it, and it probably would have went a long way towards bankrupting them the same way it did Acclaim.
Yep.
But we would have had Fire Pro ECW.
Yeah, that'd have been crazy. I mean, even if we had like Jesse Ventura's Wrestling Superstars, if that was a success, then maybe that game could have had sequels and Superfire Pro Wrestling X Premium in the US would have been pretty crazy.
Yeah, I I've DM'd with Matsumoto, the director of Fire Pro World. Not like we're friends or anything like that, but I will occasionally ask a question and I will occasionally also get an answer. I think if he gets to make another game, which the fact that he still has a job at Spike Chunsoft would imply that Fire Pro World was on some level successful.
Yeah.
He's hinted at wanting to do a wrestling game that has 3D sprites. So maybe the next game will be a 2.5D Fire Pro, which I think, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that are Fire Pro diehards that are going to get mad at me for this. They should have done that with Fire Pro World. I
Yeah.
understand you don't get to use like the assets from fucking D and Z and R, and it's a little bit harder to do legally ambiguous faces for people when it's 3D. But even if you had like cartoony character models like the AEW game, because nobody fucking expects realistic shit from Fire Pro. And anybody who does is a dummy, because Fire Pro's never looked realistic. It's always been like cartoony. I think if they went with the 3D models, a lot of the reception of that game from the like brain rotted dipshits that were like, well, I'm just going to buy 2K19, it would have been a lot less. And also, it would have been easier to sell the game at $50. Because a sprite based wrestling game that has 39 wrestlers from a company that only a small, hardcore minority of wrestling fans have heard of, that's insane. Like charging $50 for that. If it was like 2.5D and the graphics look nice, you might have had a few people jump on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like my biggest thing with World was like the content for what you were paying. Like I didn't get shit out of that fighting road that they did. I thought it was terrible.
Yeah. It
Even if
wasn't
they
good.
would have included Fire Promoter as we got it was horrible. They literally could have lifted management of the ring and it would have been significantly better than what we got, but they didn't.
I mean, yeah,
Which
management of ring that was on returns, right, as well.
that was just like matchmaker mode. The one
Okay.
I'm the specific mode I'm talking about is the Game Boy Advance
Yeah,
Final Fire Pro mode.
yeah. I couldn't remember what it was called exactly on Returns, but I mean, even that had like cool ideas. Like if you were to put like like the BWO together and stuff, like it would be referenced in the game itself. Like was it? I'm saying BWO, but I mean Kintai DX. If you put them together and like a card, it would be referenced. It'd be like, hey, this stable's getting back together. That was really cool stuff that they did that.
You couldn't use edits in the one in Returns though, right?
No, you couldn't. That's right.
I remember that being like a big thing people hated about the one in Returns. The one in Final Fire Pro to me is still to this day the best GM mode type thing we are ever going to get in a wrestling game.
Yeah.
It does the interpromotional stuff really well, like where you can set up a card against a promotion or like borrow talent or lend your talent out. The negotiation process to sign people in that game is very quick. It is painless. It is fun. It is not the kick in the balls that Fire Pro World's GM mode or Fire Promoter is.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the. Have you messed around with 2K22's GM mode? I'm sorry to keep shitting on 2K22, but they just made it incredibly easy for me.
I did. I mean, I didn't think there was much to it at all, really.
I've heard they've patched like mid card titles and tag titles in, which gee, you would have fucking thought they would have had that from the beginning.
Yep.
But like, you have to book every card the same in that GM mode.
Mm-hmm.
4-star match in the opener, 4-star match in the main event. Don't book anything you give a shit about in the middle of the card, or else you'll get penalized for.
Yeah, it tells you that. Yeah.
Yeah, it literally spells it out. Like, start the show off hot, send them home happy. That's WWE in a nutshell. Fire Promoter didn't really have Fire Promoter didn't even have the management of the ring thing where it's like, or maybe it did, I just never got it to come up where like, oh, this wrestler is hot, book them in the main event. You would have shit like that like almost every month in management of the ring where it's like, these two wrestlers have an issue, book them towards the top of the card and you would get a bonus for it.
Yeah.
Or like fucking Hickson Gracie wants to come in and get victimized by Crow Cop. Yeah, sure. Let Hickson Gracie come in and get knocked out by Crow Cop, who I had as like my top star in WCW, because why wouldn't I? And with Fire Promoter, you get like your promotion's just a shithead promotion. You'll run out of money like super quickly. You can only try to sign one person per month. So if you don't get somebody, congrats, you've got to present a show with fucking 6 wrestlers. I hate that shit. The whole point of a management mode is to step into like a promotion and run that motherfucker. I don't necessarily need to play as WWE or like a global promotion. I'm fine stepping into like the top Japanese promotion or like even like a mid-sized American promotion and fucking playing from there. Fire Promoter doesn't give you that option. You are just a shithead promotion and it does not matter. And I hate it. It was so undercooked and they charge people money for it and I have no idea why.
Yeah.
That just should have been free DLC.
Fire Promoter and like the story modes were quite disappointing, especially Suda's return.
Horrible.
Yeah, I didn't like the story at all, really. One game that we haven't talked a lot about would be Fire Pro Wrestling Z, and that was a game that I actually thought had a pretty cool story mode because you could play the careers of like Keiji Muto. I think Chono was another one.
Isn't it Muto, Hashimoto, Chono, and Misawa?
That sounds about right. Yeah, yeah.
And then fucking Jason Blackheart found that there were in the game files still like complete roads for Sakuraba and Onita.
Was that where like where did Sakuraba Jr. come from?
We'll have that talk off screen.
Okay.
But I love that one because Sakuraba's the one that's like he's not a legend yet. He's like he kind of is, but he's still like active or whatever. And so they just fucking fantasy booked this whole thing where he has a son, and him and his son fight Hickson Gracie and Hickson Gracie Jr. in a tag match at the end. And depending on like the finishes of the matches and the choices you make, Sakuraba does a Tiger Mask gimmick either in like New Japan or Noah. It's just insane shit. I love it.
Yeah.
Why did that have to get cut?
I don't know, but I love that that stuff in Z. Like playing as Muto and like eventually goes to the US and like you play as Muda and you wrestle Flair and stuff like that, and that shit was that's better than I thought. That was like more fun than WWE does these showcase modes where you play the career of people, and I thought just the way that it was done in Via Pro Z was a lot more interesting and more accurate too.
Yeah, I find the showcase stuff gets too deep into like recreate the match as it happened.
Ah, and like
Like those mid-match cutscenes, like that's a cool idea, and like the Austin mode kind of got me a couple of times the first time I played it. Like, oh,
yeah,
this is so cool.
but
Dog, I just want to play through that shit to get the stuff so I can use it in exhibition mode at this point. With Fire Pro Z, I played through the Misawa path one time, and like I had so much fun because it's not like wear down Chavo Guerrero Sr. and then beat him with a fucking backslide. Like, fuck you. I'm gonna beat him with whatever I want to beat him with.
and the AI in the WWE game, especially 2K22, it will like you'll do something and then it'll be like, okay, now do a weak grapple or whatever, like a weak strike, but it'll automatically like up the AI. So if the next move you try to do is a weak strike, it'll reverse it and it'll do that a few times before it actually lets you do it because it basically knows it's the next thing that you're supposed to do on your list. So it's like, well, we're just gonna make things a little bit harder for you, but it's not making it any more fun.
Did you play through the showcase in 2K22?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bradshaw as a wrestler. I said a lot of things about Bradshaw that I did not mean when I was playing that match with him and Ray at Judgment Day '06.
I think for me
Holy
it was
shit.
the Kane match that drove me crazy.
You know what? I didn't even get far enough to play the Kane match. He doesn't even have slow chemical, right? He'd already
No,
changed
he
the theme
doesn't.
by that point. Yeah, I don't have any desire to unlock that version of Glenn Jacobs then.
I was supposed to have leg on it, right?
Yeah, yeah, somebody fucking found like the text for like the goals and shit for that match, not even just the menu image we've all seen.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's that's a big like what could have been. Like imagine a WWE game where you can play as Jushin Thunder Liger and it's an entertaining game for like 14 minutes. Enough time to get like what two matches, and I could have played Liger versus Brett and Liger versus I could have played Liger versus Brett a second time.
Yeah, there you go. I wonder if they ever thought about having like Psychosis and Juventud in that game as well.
It's so weird because apparently 2K, and we're off on a non-fire pro tangent, and I just
That's
realized
okay.
2K apparently aren't allowed to independently sign people like they used to because they're on the same kind of deal that Mattel is.
Really?
So like I guess they can only like whoever's currently under a Legends deal is who they've got, which is probably why we got Matt Born Doink
Yeah.
as DLC this go around. So whoever they've got is who they can use, which means like no Kurt Angle because he didn't have a Legends deal until just recently. And can somebody explain to me why the fuck there was no Randy Orton Rey Mysterio match from '06?
Especially when like in my faction now they've got those models in there.
Do they really have a 2000s Randy Orton in my faction?
It's not. It's got like I mean, it's got like his current face, but they've got like a younger Randy Orton with less tattoos, and they've got like a debut Rey Mysterio with the red attire now. Um, and I think maybe like a 2006 Rey.
Oh my god, it really is just like bald 2005 Randy. What the fuck?
Yep.
Wait a minute, they've got Randy Orton in like his O2 gear apparently, and he's bald.
I think someone made that. Like they've uploaded the models on Community Creations. So I don't think that actual.
I'm
Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm looking at a Smack Talks video right
Oh,
now
okay, it might be. I don't know.
where
They've
he's
got
still doing the Legend Killer pose too.
they've got so
Why?
much shit hidden in that mode. It's ridiculous. So I think we've gone through most of the interesting stuff for Fire Pro. What are we missing?
I don't know. I think we've Hal wrestling for the Game Boy.
Right, which was That did get a US release.
Released as yeah, that's what it's called in the
Yeah,
US is
yeah,
Hal
yeah, yeah,
Wrestling. In
yeah.
Japan it's just pro wrestling. And I've said this, it is a better wrestling game than any console wrestling game we get in the US until fucking like Natsume Championship Wrestling in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a fun game. You have like a Road Warrior ripoff. You got Hansen, you got Vader, you got Liger, you got Choshu, Maeda. I think there's a Fujinami and an Inoki in there too. But I've played that game so much. It's a tremendous game, and it's also one of the very few video game appearances of like the original costume for Vader. Well, not the original costume, but like New Japan Vader with like the full head mask.
The lightning, yeah.
Yeah, that's shout out to Mattel for finally making that in figure form. I
Yes,
love that fucking
that's
thing.
right next to me. It's one of the best.
It's on
figures.
my Japanese figure shelf in my living room.
Funny enough, I've never played Hall Wrestling, but now I'll have to check it out. I do remember when I was a kid, there was a store in the mall that had, I believe it was Hall Wrestling and was it Superstars 2 for the Game Boy on a shelf behind the counter? Two games that I never played, so I'll have to check out Hall Wrestling.
You don't want to check out Superstars 2
No, Superstars
if
1
that's
was
the one
alright.
you're thinking of. Yeah, that game's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like WrestleFest on the Game Boy.
I got that game in late 2000, brand new. And so I guess when Acclaim lost the license, they just re-released a bunch of games, or they released whatever dead stock they had. Because I have Superstars, and I had to actually peel the little circular WWF hologram sticker off of it.
Yeah.
Because it drove me nuts that like the Attitude Era logo was on that box, because it's a game from like 1991. But I got that game, and when I had my appendix out, I was playing a whole lot of that in Pokemon Silver in the hospital until they told me to go home. It's a great little game. And also for like 1991 era WWF, if you told most people to pick 5 wrestlers, those are probably the 5 wrestlers they're going to pick: Warrior, Hogan, Savage, DiBiase, and Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember playing
You
it,
can get.
but I don't know where, because we didn't have that game for the Game Boy, so I don't know where I played it at.
Well, if you wanted to correct the issue of having never played Superstars 2, currently on eBay there are a couple complete in box copies, one of which is $99.99.
No, I'm not paying that for it. I'm too cheap. And I don't think I'd like it anyway.
It's got a steel cage match.
No.
It's got the Mountie.
Well, now you're talking. Once you add Jacques Rougeau to a game, I'm there.
It's got Sid Justice too, which is probably actually the biggest draw of it is just hearing the 8-bit version of the Sid theme.
Well, I could hear the 16-bit
Why was that
version
such a
on
big deal?
Why
were those theme songs such a big deal? Like, we're gonna waste all this card space on this audio that like you're only gonna discover if you sit on the fucking select screen for 5 seconds.
That's true, but like as a kid, that was the coolest shit, right? Like,
I used to blare the Crush theme to annoy the shit out of my cousins.
I used to when I would play like Royal Rumble and Raw, like I'd constantly just play the themes.
I literally, when I was super little, like 4 years old, I would just play the Crush theme and stand up on the couch and do like the little Crush hand motion. He wasn't on TV anymore at this point. He was fucking long gone. And I'm just like, yeah, Crush.
God.
He's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I don't care who knows it.
His promos when he joined the NWO, I mean, his promos... Actually, no, what am I talking about? His promos in the Nation of Domination are absolutely horrible. Like...
Oh, he was not a good talker.
His idea of, like, insulting someone would be, like, calling someone a wussy.
Or a pencil neck geek.
Yeah, yeah. Great song, by the way.
He fucking ruled. I don't care. He had a good match with Bret Hart one time.
He was
so
like,
did Henry Godwinn. But,
when we went they would have house shows here around 95 and 96. It was always crushing the main event.
Yeah, because they knew who was going to draw the fucking house, pal.
Well, he didn't draw much of one, I'll tell you that. But it was like...
Well, nobody did in 95.
No, it was like crushing Lex Luger and... Who else did it? Was Crush and... Was it Crush and Yokozuna? against Lex Luger and Shawn Michaels was another one, which I believe was Luger's
I mean, that
last
match sounded really good until you got to Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, I think that was Luger's last match in WWF, actually. But
Well, what a way to go out.
yeah, that's a subject for another day.
Yeah, we're gonna do a whole podcast dedicated to Crush and his appearances. And what is he in? He's in 2 WWF games, right? He's in no 3. He's in both versions of Royal Rumble. He's in Rage in the Cage, and he's a Game Gear exclusive for WWF Raw.
Oh, don't remind me of that because I have that and it's shit and I don't like it.
I have that. I had my mom buy me a Game Gear with that in 4th grade.
Well,
So this is like early 02.
I told you the story of what happened with me was they put the advertisement for Raw on the back of the magazines and they made the Game Gear version look the same as the Super Nintendo. So I was like, whoa, I've got a Game Gear, like this will be like having Raw just playing on my Game Gear, and my parents got it for me for my birthday. And I was like, what the hell is this? And my mom was like, do you like it? I'm like, yeah. But I couldn't tell what was going on. The sprites were so small, it was terrible.
If the sprites were a little bit bigger, that game would have been perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The Game Gear version, I mean. The Game Boy version is... Oh,
Rough.
that one's rough because it doesn't have Crush.
You know, the game that I think, when I was a really young kid, it was like you needed to play everything wrestling and you liked everything even if it was bad. I think the game that broke my spirit was King of the Ring on Nintendo. Because...
Oh, God. Damn.
I had played WrestleMania Challenge at my cousin's birthday party, and I liked that game. And then I sort of skipped...
Me too.
I sort of skipped Steel Cage Challenge, but then I played King of the Ring thinking, oh, well, this is a new WWF game. I rented it, and I took it home, and I was a kid, I was just like, I don't like this. Like, there's nothing I like about it. It broke my spirit.
That game, so I didn't play that game until 2000. I had I think it might have been EGM when I was a kid. That this has nothing to do with Fire Pro at this point. I don't care. I'm just talking. Okay. It was like a 2-page spread. Royal Rumble now on Genesis, and in the bottom right corner, there's a little fucking advertisement for King of the Ring, and it's just the box art. And I see the box art, and Bret Hart's the guy featured. And I loved Bret Hart when I was a kid. I still love Bret Hart. He's the fucking man. So naturally, like my whole childhood, I'm like, oh man, if I ever find this game, I gotta play it. One time we were at Walmart, and this was back when like the game case was that thing where it was like the card of the front of the box, you flip it up, back of the box is on the other side, and they'd have to unlock the fucking thing, and it was like a drawer that had the game in it. Did they have that shit near you, or is that just a US thing?
Yeah.
And I didn't have a Game Boy yet. And the whole reason I wanted that game when I saw the back was that Mr. Perfect was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom's like, you don't have a Game Boy. So like years later, I got it, and I'm like, oh man, I've wanted this game like my whole life. Which it's weird to say that when you're like a 3rd grader, but it was goddamn true. And I fucking put the thing in my Game Boy Color. I turn it on, like the menu music's all right, you know? I get into an actual match, and like a minute and a half later, I'm fucking just playing Pokemon again, and Mom's like, you already done with that one? I'm like, yeah, Mom, that game sucks. It's horrible.
Yeah, that was
I don't get why they didn't just run with fucking Mania Challenge.
I have no idea.
Or Superstars, for Christ's sake. Imagine a Superstar-style game on the Super Nintendo.
That have you noticed that the menu music from WrestleMania Challenge is like almost exactly the same as one of like the versions of Battletoads and Double Dragon? Like it's almost the same song.
It would make sense because doesn't David Wise do the fucking music for Battletoads?
Yeah.
And Donkey Kong Country.
It was crazy when I first heard that. I was like, holy shit, this is the same music. What the hell?
Have you ever heard Ted DiBiase's theme song from WWF Superstars on the Game Boy?
They didn't use like Girls and Cars again, did they?
No, it's like, I don't know what it's based. It's not based on his actual theme. It's like the catchiest fucking shit you'll ever hear in your life. Anybody listening to this, so like 6 people, if I haven't already sent you that video numerous times through the years on Twitter, through DMs or Discord, go on YouTube and find DiBiase's theme song from Superstars for the Game Boy. It is amazing. I may or may not have put that song on my laptop that I play Fire Pro on to use as background music.
I want to check that out. I won't do it now because
And
I'll probably
speaking
blow
of
out
them
the
using
speakers.
Girls in Cars for DiBiase, the version of Girls in Cars that's in WrestleMania for the NES is like the most depressing song I've ever heard in my life. Which is weird because the actual song is like super upbeat.
I love that song.
Fuck yeah. Pile Driver was a great album.
Yeah, I had that video as a kid and I used to watch it all the time. Like my family used to sing like "If You Only Knew." We
That
loved it.
actually might be my favorite song on that whole album.
It's great.
The Hillbilly Jim Waking Up Alone song. That's like unironically like a decent little like late 80s country song.
They didn't have that on the video.
Really?
Yeah, it was Pile Driver, then it was Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, then it was Honky Tonk Man, then Demolition, Slick, and If You Only Knew. Job so
The
bro.
Slick video has an intro that you absolutely could not get away with now for
Nope.
a number of reasons.
I know exactly what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of harmful stereotypes are being perpetrated in
Yep.
that intro.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was the 80s. What can we say?
It certainly was.
Slick ruled.
Slick did rule.
I
Yeah.
loved that guy.
I want his zombie sealer figure.
Yeah, yeah. I hope we end up actually getting it, buddy.
Who knows what the hell's going on with these companies? Cella is like now going to be owned by Wrestling Trader. We've got this new company that's making The Godfather. Still Rush Collectibles. It's too much.
It's yeah, like we were talking about this well, the last two episodes were off recording, but like there's not enough of a market there to and I guess this is how we're gonna end the podcast, is just talking about other shit. This will be the weekly thing when we drift off to other topics, but there's too many companies trying to do the same thing, and only one of them is making a product that I'm actually compelled to spend my money on, and that's Zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have the Sabu in hand. It's like one of my favorite like action figures that I own. The Dino Bravo is very nice in hand. The Hebner, not super happy with how the head turned out on that figure. Some of it's the paint application. Some of it's just I don't really think it looks like Earl Hebner. But like his stuff's clearly the highest quality in terms of sculpts. But it took a little over a year from pre-order to ship. And when the figures are $40 each, and some people like myself, I bought two of Hebner, two of Sabu, and two of Bravo, so I was on the hook for a lot of money, we'll say. A year is so long to have money tied up in pre-orders that you have no fucking idea when you're going to get them.
Yeah.
And that's why I've kind of begun to abstain from pre-ordering, and I feel justified in this now, from pre-ordering any of the Cella stuff. Because I mean, did you pre-order the uncensored collection or whatever their elite style is called, Dynamite Kid?
I didn't. The only pre-orders I've got with them right now are Haku and Greg Valentine.
I had no idea the Valentine figure ever went up for pre-order.
Yeah.
Huh. I feel bad for everybody. It's been 16 months and there's been minimal updates on that elite style Dynamite Kid.
Yeah. It's beyond crazy at this point.
Yeah, and I see the people, and it's always bad faith arguments from people on wrestling figs, but the people who are like, well, do you really think Power Town's going to be able to deliver the figures at like a reasonable quality? Yeah, I do. They're using a factory that used to make figures for McFarlane. They're using a sculptor who used to work for McFarlane. Steve Rosenthal was in the toy business for decades. I have way more like confidence in their ability to put out a worthwhile action figure line than I ever would the mom and pop organization that Cella was. Because like their 3D renders are kind of rough. And then you see like the actual, like the unpainted prototypes, or even some of the have you seen the Andre the Giant that Chella's putting out?
Yeah, I was interested in that, but the face on it's kind of rough.
Yeah, it's I don't know why so many people have an issue with sculpting or even drawing Andre the Giant's face. He's not just like a really big human being. Like he has, pardon the expression, he has like freakish figures. Like the acromegaly really did make him look like completely different from other human beings. Like his facial structure and shit's completely different than like yours or mine. And it feels like whenever anybody makes an Andre figure, I mean, Zombies looks like Andre. That's like dead on. But like the overwhelming majority, it's like, oh, he was just a really big guy. Give him
Yeah,
a really big head.
Super 7 ones didn't look very good either, I thought.
Oh god, I have the IWE one, which I bought just for the novelty of saying I own an IWE Andre the Giant figure. It's not good. I the Super 7, I had such high hopes for those figures, like all the wrestling ones. They were not the majors because I don't care about them, or the Good Brothers because I don't care about them.
Yeah.
But the New Japan stuff and the Andre the Giant stuff, I was so excited for. And I like my New Japan figures for the most part, but those Andre figures are like infuriating for the price that they're charging. Like you're charging like $50, and you like, oh, we're gonna include the beer can with every fucking figure. Okay, well, how about like one head sculpt that actually looks like the guy?
Yeah.
Can we get one? I've noticed with a lot of the Super 7 stuff that's based on like actual human beings and not like cartoons or whatever, they very seldom nail the likeness.
They're not doing Suzuki, right? It's Storm Collectibles, is that right?
Yeah, and we don't know what's happening with the Storm Collectibles Suzuki since they signed the exclusive deal with Big Bad.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I remember the night of Forbidden Door, my phone blowing up when the Suzuki figure got shown, and then again when Shibata showed up. And I was super excited about the Suzuki, and it's 4 months later almost, and we have no clue if that figure is even still coming.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, regards to Cella, like not talking about the delays and stuff because I think that stuff is kind of beyond ridiculous now. But like the criticisms of the figures themselves, I get, but like I would say for myself, like I've been pretty happy with the ones I've got. Like Bull Nakano is like way too bronze and small, but I think I like it overall. The Atom Bomb I thought was good. The Dynamite Kid retro, the face isn't very good on it, but the Hayabusa is a bit too big, but I do like the figure overall. And I think for the price point, like I don't have much complaints as opposed to Zombie Sailor, which are a bit more.
I'm willing to pay more for like higher quality though. I wanted to love that Dynamite Kid figure, but it's like it feels like three different figures kind of mashed together. The head's super tiny. The legs of this thing were like the thighs are super bulky, and the rest of like the proportions on it are just so fucking weird.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think the Nick Aldis one, which was the first one they released, is the worst with the weird head, and he looks like what's the guy from like Green Lantern, Hector Harmon with the huge head. Not a great figure at all. So I think that they did make improvements, but they sort of imploded at this point.
They've absolutely gotten better from like the original figure that they did.
I like
I'm not
the prototypes of
super happy with the
Demolition.
recent stuff though.
No.
Huh?
I like the prototypes of Demolition that they showed. The Greg Valentine is definitely superior to WWE's Mattel Retro. The Killer Bees had basically the same face and body, but I don't really have too much complaints about those. I think the Davy Boy Smith prototype that they had in one of the pictures was looking pretty good. So it's a real shame because I thought when they started off, even if the figures weren't top quality, they still had a good following for delivering products on a fairly regular basis. But there's been so much wait for this Dynamite Kid, and now Chella's not even operating as it was. Now it's going to be owned by Wrestling Trade, and they've got a bunch of back orders to get through. So, um, who knows how long it's going to take to get all these out? Who knows if the contracts will still be valid for like future figures like the Road Warriors and like Onita and all these stuff that they had planned to begin with.
They're still saying the Onita figure is coming.
Oh, okay, well that's good.
I do wonder about the contracts though, because it's been said the Zombie Sailor stuff is like limited time exclusivity.
Yeah. Well, he sent out like a legal threat to Rush because they were making a Mikey Whipwreck in an ECW lane. Which, what is he doing?
I had not heard anything about that actually.
Yeah, they posted about it on Instagram that basically he had sent them a threat because they were making Mikey Whipwreck, and in their response, they're doing a zombie sailor figure, a literal zombie sailor that they just released a design of. So, all right.
I can't imagine that thing actually ends up getting made. That feels like a
Nah,
lawsuit.
I don't think so. I think they were just messing around. It's kind of pettiness from both sides, I guess.
I don't know. Rush has posted a lot of stuff. I remember
Yes.
before they blocked me, they were posting like Instagram stories just like complaining about Zombie frequently,
Yeah.
about how like you didn't make your figures, and it's like, no, he was smart enough to find people who could make high quality figures for him, and he's the guy heading the line. That's what you're supposed to do.
It's almost becoming like less of a figure business and more of a figure sketch business at this point. Like, look at these designs, look at these pictures. Great.
Yeah, I love seeing Ron Rudat sketches of like when they posted the Sabu sketch, it blew my mind because like this is the guy I think who did the artwork for like fucking Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart and
Yeah.
a couple of Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior figures, and here's a goddamn drawing he did of Sabu.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
That's cool, but like when it comes to like other studios like Rush, like they've released so many sketches, I'm like, God damn, get the figures out now, I don't want to say any more sketches. I don't want to say any more announcements. Just make the goddamn things.
I really want to support the ECW style line that they're doing, but
So
they've
do I.
given me no reason to outside of Simon Diamond.
Yeah, when I heard that announcement, I got super excited, right? Because I've always wanted to collect those. You couldn't actually get those figures here. I had to trade a copy of Coliseum Video Survivor Series 1992 for someone to send me RVD and Sabu years ago. So I never got any of the other ones. Like I've got Lance Storm that I bought off eBay and its packaging, but I've wanted to collect the rest and like to have the missing ones as well, like Spike Dudley and all that. I think that'd be really neat, but like who knows when they're actually going to get me.
Did they announce Spike?
I believe maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, I might be getting confused with Wrestling Code because he's in that. Yeah.
Because I see I'm scrolling down Fig Heel's Instagram right now just to see if there's any that I've missed, because it's entirely possible.
I think I messed it up
blocked.
because like he's in the Wrestling Code as well, and that's very ECW. So I'm thinking I'm getting my talent mixed up.
They did announce a Joel Gertner, so
Oh.
that's
Well,
oh boy,
well.
C.W. Anderson.
Which, if you look at the drawing, like he's got like an open mouth, but if you look at the actual product, like the prototype, he's got a closed mouth, and it seems to have a more generic expression on his face. So
I actually have not seen the prototype.
I think it was
It's
just like
time to open an incognito window.
I think it was just like a 3D sketch, but it wasn't anywhere near complete. It was just an idea, but you can see that it's different from what the drawing was.
Oh god, I just saw the Zombie Sailor thing. Let's see, we got some like shitty monster toys. There's that interviewer guy from YouTube. There's a C.W. Anderson, like a 3D render of him. That
Yeah.
actually doesn't look super bad.
But they changed the expression. I thought it would have been better, but I don't know. We'll see what it's like when it's finished.
Oh god, I just saw the CW figure. Why is he that fat, bro?
Maybe he ate Elektra. I don't know. I think a lot of people
Whatever
did.
happened to her anyway?
She was on The Sopranos, wasn't she?
Wasn't that like when ECW was still like current though?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out the historic career of Elektra. Like, it was ACW, then she was on the first episode of TNA, and then she would have been doing like New York Indies, right? Like
In theory.
New York Championship Wrestling and stuff like that. And then she was on One Night Stand in the crowd, and that was it.
Right. And she didn't look anything like Elektra looked either.
No, not at all.
Speaking of Cella Toys, Uncensored Dynamite Kit is completed and undergoing final packaging stage before shipping from factory. We anticipate this to ship within the next 3 weeks.
When did they release that update?
Wrestling Trader released that update about 2 hours ago.
Oh, okay, I didn't say that.
Al Snow's expected to be in stock early to mid next month. Big Daddy and Blue Haystacks early November. Wrestling Megastar Series 2, including Haku, Tongaloa, Nova, Meanie, and Stevie Richards, still going ahead as planned. More updates in 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh no!
Uncensored Sabu is still as planned. If you order the Figure Collections exclusive Hornswoggle,
No,
he's due in stock in November.
no, I'm okay.
And if you ordered Gangrel, he's expected to be completed within the next 40 days, which is a very specific number of days.
I was gonna order that, but it was only available through the UK through Wrestling Trader and not Asylum Wrestling Store, and the shipping was kind
I
of
think
crazy.
it's on Figure Collections.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, maybe I'll get
Yeah,
that.
I think they have a deal where like the Figure Collection stuff is on Wrestling Trader and vice versa. I'll check. I don't want like any of the 3 people that are going to listen to this to hear this and think that I'm telling them to go to this website that's clearly not selling these action figures.
I like Asylum. I always
Oh boy.
order them through there.
I ordered my Hayabusa through them.
I find they're pretty good. The shipping's good for me, at least, anyway.
I'm trying to think if I ordered anything else from them. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, Gangrel's right here on Figure Collections. He is currently $35.97.
That's probably gonna be like 55 Canadian, and then probably like
And I do not see Uncensored Dynamite Kit on here anymore.
I ordered the did I tell you that I ordered the Boss Rush Ultimo Dragon?
Oh, did you? That's
Yeah.
a cool figure.
But here's the thing though. So I ordered it through their website, and the price wasn't converting properly to Canadian for me. So in total, it came up to about $60 Canadian with shipping. Then I went on Amazon.ca, and all of a sudden there's Ultimo Dragon, and he's $30 Canadian with free shipping for Prime. So it's like, holy shit! Like, I've got to cancel this, so I did, and I ordered it off Amazon. Although it's not expected to ship, and I imagine this will change until September 2023.
I would sure as hell hope those figures are going to be in stock before then.
Yeah. So I was like, well, even if it doesn't, I'm still saving $30 by getting it from Amazon. So, guess we'll wait and see. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have Vampiro up there as well.
Looks like our boy Tom Billington, the uncensored version is no longer available to be ordered from anywhere. So
Tom Billington is not my boy.
Well,
I've read his
he's
book.
my boy. Okay, no, he's not. But great pro wrestler. That's where I'll leave it. I don't really feel like saying anything about him as a human being because I'll get myself in trouble.
Yeah,
I'm sure with somebody.
On that note, I think we've gone quite off topic, but that's okay.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Fireprint like a solid 30 minutes at this point.
No,
It feels
but
like.
it's all right. I mean, it's wrestling. There's a lot of interesting topics, whether it be wrestling in general, figures. I mean, we're into all that shit, so it's gonna happen. Whatever.
Yeah.
Should we lock it down now? Are we good to go?
I think we are good to go. So for my co-host Liger Busa, I'm Mongo, and this has been the 3rd episode of Critical: The History of Pro Wrestling Video
First.
Games, and we will see you hopefully next time.
Adios.
We have recording software.
We do indeed.